nation, destroys our generation. I don't mind, I don't mind, I don't mind, I don't mind.
And how are we doing, everybody? Welcome everybody to yeah, not bad. Getting some things loaded up here. Apologize for that. Wow. How's everybody doing this fantastic Saturday? Officially in the month of October now. Hope everybody's doing well. Got, like I said, just getting things loaded up here. Got not a whole lot, I guess, to go over with for the new items, I guess, for new and or updated items for the Texas Motor Speedway track build for NASCAR Racing 2003. But yeah, we're getting right into it. Alright. Yeah, definitely hope everybody's doing well. Changing some things, still tweaking on things, I guess, as far as stream quality, and yeah, we had a little bit of problems, I guess, as far as with last time there, so I've kind of taken some of that information, I guess, as far as to redo, I guess, some conducting, I guess, stream today. So if things tend to go, I guess, off kilter, I guess, there a little bit, that might be part of the reason why, just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a heads up. Alright, but yeah, we got the track loaded up in here. One of the main and really only things, I guess, as far as since last stream that has been updated to this deal is the Speedway Motor Corp Incorporated, SMI for short, I guess, as far as the logos that adorn the safer walls. I made some suggestions to Torch, I guess, as far as what need to be adjusted to these two, include, I guess, as far as taking some of the polys off the backside and only exposing, I guess, the polys that are actually visible. So that's been applied here. I do not have the updated texture to this yet. I wanted to show some comparisons between that. So you can see with this one here, this is the previous texture that was applied prior to this new texture that has been applied. Yikes, has that already been another month? Wait, did that come across there? I think I missed the, I heard the sound, I didn't see the, I just didn't happen to look there. So that might be one of the other things that might be kind of forked up, I guess, as far as the deal, I guess, it comes up on the screen. Here, let me check something here real quick. Alright, I did come across that, that's cool. 24 months, is that right? That seems like that was a quick month. I know, Torch, welcome on in, by the way. Hope you're doing well. Torch had gifted a sub last week, so that might be what I'm thinking of, I guess, as far as I've seen Torch's name, I guess, come up across that. So yeah, just making sure everything is working as it's intended to, I guess, as far as all the sweet. That's hard to believe, though, that it's been a month already. Wow, those months time fly. And the fact that we are in a new month, as I already mentioned, I guess, as far as we're already in the month of October, second day, just to be specific. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. Appreciate that 24 months, though. I know it's probably definitely been longer than that, as far as how long you've been interacting and engaging, I guess, with the streams here for Spline Design Studios Saturday and abroad. But definitely appreciate that. That's a heck of a lot of... No, very early start to this too there. I don't know if we got some lurkers in there. If we got the emotes, let's put some hype out in there. Let's see if the hype, making sure some things work here. Let's get some hype out there in the chat. And it spells it. I guess it helps if I spell it right? Words are hard. There we go. Okay, so that's definitely still working. Cool. Appreciate that, Torch. Yeah, so just to keep in mind, I have adjusted, I guess, some things as far as the stream, as far as bit rate, and a couple of different video quality issues there, so it might not be quite as pristine as it's been. Just trying to feel out, I guess, as far as what's going to work more balanced and more neutral, I guess, as far as to not potentially have any problems by having so many applications open. Particularly 3ds Max. You know, we ran NASCAR Racing 2003, tried to run that through the other PC last week there. Yeah, it was not happy. The system was not happy at all. I'm just making sure. There's our buddy Torch. How we doing, Torch? Giving it a shot and got nothing out of that one. Darn near almost got that jackpot though. Killed it last week though. I remember that. He was having hella good luck, I guess, as far as last week there. I think it ended up being, what was the lucky number there, Torch? I think it was 7. I remember it right. But yeah, getting back into this here too, kind of going over, I guess, as far as what's been updated since the previous model of this SMI medallions, as we call these are labeled as. So we've got some things that are adjusted to it to include removing unnecessary polys to it and only exposing those that are... I don't have the texture, the new texture applied to this, and I've done that for a reason, just to kind of show the differences, so you can kind of see kind of how, for lack of a better way to put it, how flat it looks, and it's, you know, as far as putting it back into position. And I've pointed this out before. In comparison to the new texture, it's a huge difference. Huge. So yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at those differences there. So I'm gonna put that back into position there. We also have these further down the track here in this position, which are much the same thing. That uses that same texture that we're gonna be looking at here. And I've got it loaded up here. So this is the comparisons between the previous texture, this soft wall inner. So it's a texture that's already been established, I guess, as far as for the inner walls, that has these same types of medallions that are in the infield safer. So using that same texture, I guess, as far as for these medallions on the outside walls, kind of getting, you know, some more bang for your buck, if you will. But there's the main difference that I wanted to show on this is the difference in the shading here, I guess, as far as how it blends in more. And we'll be able to see how this looks actually on that medallion piece that I was just showing. There's some other areas here that I do notice that they get adjusted as well. Namely like this part here. But the main focus, like I said, is this right here. You can see how much different. So this, I'm assuming, was the back side of those medallions. I had made the suggestion, I guess, as far as to remove that. If that wasn't present, I guess, on the actual medallions, you know, per the track there, I kind of assumed that was probably just a, you know, flat, plain color. So that's been adjusted. So yeah, you can see just those comparisons like that. Now what I'm going to do at this point here is I'm going to close this version of Sandbox, or this track in here, and I'm going to load that new texture in there. We're going to see how that looks now. So it was 7? Okay. I knew it was quite a few. Lucky number 7. Yellowish color. Oh, it's to the wall. Oh, yeah, I was trying to remember what you meant. So this yellowish color here. Yeah, I kind of figured that was probably just to change the look, I guess, of that. Where exactly is this? What part of this, I guess, as far as... yeah, probably elaborate on that one there. I'm assuming this is only going to be for the inner walls and not so much the these medallions, I guess, as far as that we're applying on the outside walls. That's what I assume, but you can feel free to elaborate on it just to kind of clarify. Alright, let's go like this. We're going to go to Geometry View. We're going to close this out. Do not want to save that. The only reason why it's giving me this here is because I moved that object. I don't want to adjust that. So there's really no other PTF changes besides getting the victory lane oriented properly, I guess, as far as in the same way, I guess, as far as all the other objects are. That's been 0 oriented, if you want to do, as far as 0, 0, 0 on all X, Y, and Z. Oh, on the outer walls too? I guess you'll have to clarify, I guess it's on the top wall. Okay. Alright, we'll have to take a look at that. So, here, before I do that, let's take a look at this. Let's make some comparisons here, I guess, while we're at it. So the top wall here, in specific. So okay, I think I can probably see where you're going with this. So to get the, excuse me, to get this top of the medallion, I guess, to blend probably with this top here, we'll probably see that difference there too. So that's probably a good point to make on this here. Alright, so let's load this out. Do not want to save that. Like I said, I moved that out just to kind of pull it to see what was going on with the object. Now I'm going to put this new texture, copy that into this. Did that intentionally, I guess, as far as to I just got, I don't know where the heck I put it. Gosh. Alright, so yeah, let me navigate back here. So we've got this new texture. Labeled this one here. So we need this new south wall inner. That's the texture being applied to that. Go back to our track edit folder and we'll replace that from what we've got there. Yep, I want to replace that. So that, like I said, I did that intentionally just to kind of show those differences, and I thought that was a pretty. There's other areas of this texture that have been adjusted, I guess, as far as that on that as well. Just like Torch mentioned this area here and so on. So that's pretty cool. So what we want to do is reload this now with this new texture. That's about the only way you can get the textures on objects. You don't be at trackside objects to be able to reapply, is to put the new texture in, close out the track, and then just reopen it. That's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to navigate to where I've added this victory lane. And this is my own PTF. And keeping in mind, I'm assuming Torch, you know, if you did get that victory lane that I did send to you, that's all you would have to do is just make sure that it's at the 0, 0, 0, 0 orientation. Or that, and that should be, we should be on the same boat for that. So yeah, so as far as that goes, whatever PTF that you give me from this point, from that point on, is still going to match, I guess, as far as what I've got, to include, I guess, whatever you apply post fact. Okay. Alright, so we got the track loaded up here to give it a second there. Oh, nope, she's still loading. Okay. Give it another second. As far as anything else going on with the track, there's really nothing else new. What I was probably thinking of going over on, and this kind of goes back to when we were trying to test these things out, I guess, as far as in the sim itself with the track. It's kind of thinking to be dumb. Looks like it. Might have to close this completely out. She completely locked up. That's a hold on a second here. Let me do this. We're going to close this completely out and reopen it. Alright. No problem. So we're going to do it this way. Yeah, she completely locked up, and that's kind of the nature sometimes of Inbox there. It's a very buggy program in that fashion. Not a big deal. Just go ahead and load it back up. Give it a second again. Yeah, so as far as needing to do like any additional 3D modeling, I don't initially have anything planned. Unless there's something that tends to crop up, I guess, as far as in the process of, I guess, of, you know, just discussing, I guess, as far as what's going on with the track here currently. But as it stands, I don't really have anything other than to just take a closer look at how to gain access, I guess, to that victory lane area. So as I was mentioning, as far as we went into testing mode for the track last week, and obviously you weren't able to gain access to that victory lane that we applied. So there's ways to go about that, and it's definitely summary for some of us, but definitely a good review, I guess, as far as to show how you gain, make access, I guess, to different areas of the track, particularly the innermost segment of the track. So the fact that the segment more or less ends right in front of this here, we'll need to open that up on that segment. So it doesn't really have much to do with the X section itself. I know that had been brought up here. We really got to go into here and actually open that up on the left side of that segment so we can have access to this. And the way this is designed here, we should be able to accomplish that, at least in this area here, without too much of a problem. We'll be getting into that here in just a second, but for now that I've got the track reloaded up here, and we got that new texture applied to this medallion, you can see how this blends in now. Yeah, so you can really get so it's a good thing that Torch had mentioned that. So the way this top edge of that medallion actually blends in now, you can see how that works. I am noticing a little bit of clipping, I guess, of the safer wall, I guess, right there, and I'm sure that's probably can be accomplished there with just a little bit more of adjustment. I know, Torch, you had mentioned last week, and you kind of DM'd me about how there's a little bit of a lip, and that's fair. I can probably see that's what you were probably trying to accomplish by having this little bit of a lip there, because this piece here, more than likely, without actually looking at how they've actually got this applied, it's probably like screwed or bolted on to this top edge of the safer, so it's obviously not going to line up 100% with the actual, the rest of the safer. So the fact that this does look like it's, two separate pieces, kind of adds a little bit something to it. So I'm sure, based on what you had DM'd me last week, I guess, as far as that's probably your little play, I guess, as far as to make it look like two independent pieces, which essentially it is. Well, clipping was probably the wrong term, I guess, to use, but initially when I look at it, as far as that's been done intentionally, as I make it look, as I take a closer look at it, to make it, look like the two independent. Just like I said, these pieces here, in reality, are two independent pieces. So they, like I said, they bolt this or screw this down, however they apply this to the top edge of the safer to make it line up with the graphic that's on the actual this side of the safer here, as far as this welded edge, if you want to call it that. So that's pretty neat. That's based on a picture, like I said, that Torch had showed me post fact. In reality, as far as how those medallions actually look, I am noticing though too, and it may be a mapping issue or just a texture issue, as far as just this little splotch of red right in that spot. So nothing, nothing major, but I think it may be a little bit of a texture mapping issue. I like how this blends really well, I guess, as far as what that top edge of this medallion to the this is a geometric safer, so this is geometric wall, this is model, and the fact that that blends in pretty darn nicely, to be honest, that's pretty good. It looks more like it belongs there, and you can hardly tell the difference at this point, other than that little bit of a lip that's on that part there to give it that little bit of attitude, if you will, I guess, as far as to make it look like two individual pieces. That's pretty neat. The subtleness, I guess, of that lip, that little bit of edge there, it just adds to it. It's not too profound. It's not like what the heck is that? You can definitely tell, I guess, as far as just what is going on with that. And it even lines up here pretty well too. You can't even tell from this looking at it straight on like that. The only way you can really tell is this way, or this way, probably, for that matter. That's pretty freaking cool. I mean, it blends in so much nicer, and that's why I wanted to show the difference between without the new texture and with the new one. You can't even tell at this point. I don't know how else to put it. It's hard to distinguish, I guess, as far as what is modeled and what's the geometric and so on. It blends in really nice. That turned out really cool. Bleeding for the texture. You gave it hell, brother. You can tell you did. Yeah, the top is inset. Right, and I guess that's probably the better way to put it as far as the inset. That's pretty neat, the way that's done. You know, to give it that, that, I don't want to put that, give it that attitude of the fact that it is two independent pieces. You know, you got the safer itself as far as the 8 welded piece of square tubing, and then this piece above that, you know, as far as on the top of the wall, is actually like screwed on or welded, however they attach it to that, and it doesn't line up 100%. That's pretty, it's just those subtle details like that to give it, you know, a little bit of attitude. And the fact that you do have to really get kind of really up onto it to really see that amount of detail. You wouldn't otherwise notice that just by looking at it from a distance. Just the way that blends in there now. And that's kind of the whole idea behind it. So, yeah, so as far as bleeding on that there, I would have to actually see the wire to this here just to see what's actually going on with that little red spot. Yeah, so it's like if there's just one vertice or something like that within that wire for that top part of the medallion, for example, it might be just need to be adjusted a little bit. And it's just a very minor, but the fact that it is there, and it doesn't look like it's in the texture itself, so it's probably more in the wire mapping to it itself. I don't see that same splotch in that same area there, so pretty cool, pretty darn cool. Now, getting back to, that's really about the only thing that's been updated to the track, like I was saying, other than last week as far as finishing up this, and it's now in the 0 orientation, I guess, as far as this. For some that tuned in, I guess, as far as how I applied this last week, it was done more manually, I guess, as far as to get it in a position based on the, you know, just the ground image there. I'm assuming going through the whole process, I guess, of getting this into place here based on the LiDAR, the scene that we have in 3ds Max with the LiDAR and all that stuff, I noticed that there's probably still going to need to be some adjustments to the infield object, because one of the things that I do notice, and we've pointed this out before, there is some texture skewing based on that satellite image. This goes all the way back to when we were building, you know, just discussing, I guess, the build of the geometry for the track. We know there is some shifting of the ground texture that we started off with there, and the fact that this same thing was used for the ground, you know, the base texture, you know, the background texture for the track was used to make this infield object, so that's going to be off just as much. So the fact that this here, now I went entirely by the LiDAR for the most part. I kind of, I hate to use the term fudge, because, you know, but that's essentially what I ended up doing, you know, to kind of differentiate, I guess, between the proper positioning of the LiDAR and then that known shifting of the texture, you know, the image that is the sat image that comes from Google Earth. And that is our base texture for the ground plane, I guess, for the track build itself. We know that's not 100% lined up as far as, especially like in this direction. So the fact that this victory lane is off center from what's on the, you know, that texture, that tells me, or whatever, there's probably still some adjustment that needs to be made to the infield object in that regard. This is going back to also to how this is placed. Same thing. The fact that this this here is in the proper position, I guess, as far as based on LiDAR, right? But the fact that the texture for the actual infield shows that the shadow for that is not quite where it needs to be. So the fact that it looks like this needs to be here, that's shifted the wrong way that way. So there is some adjustment that definitely needs to be made to the infield object. Very minor, I guess, for the most part, but there is reasons. So you don't, I guess the whole point trying to make with this is you don't want to sacrifice, if you will, I guess, as far as the positioning based on the LiDAR information that we know is true and accurate, as far as the positioning of things in comparison to, you know, the texture skewing that we know exists based on that stitching of the satellite image, I guess, from Google Earth to the base image of the track, you know, as far as the overall, you know, where we started with, I guess is what I want to say. So, yeah, so between, I guess, having to fill up this gap in the infield object and having these texture skewings that exist, that we know exist, I guess, as far as in that, you know, what's applied, I guess, to that infield image, that's the only thing that's really still left, I guess, to go over. But we know for sure that this thing is where it needs to be. Just based on, you know, picture references. One of the things I did go by, I guess, as far as, for example, and it's all about perspective, right? So you have to be kind of careful. Depending on, you know, where you're looking at this from, you can definitely tell that this victory lane does not 100% line up with it. Now, when I say all this, right, there's still some of these logos that we have on the track probably aren't 100% where they need to be. So this might need to go a little bit more this way. So that's why I mentioned that. Possibly, but that's also taking into consideration, like I said, well, we know the texture skewings that exist on other things, and we don't want that to compromise, I guess, as far as the positioning of objects, that we know where it needs to go based on that LiDAR. That LiDAR is our Bible. The fact that that's scaled properly at this point, any textures that are applied based on the positioning of things, like, for example, there's no way to tell where a flat graphic is going to be applied on the track based on LiDAR. There's no definition in the LiDAR itself that'll tell us, yep, this is where that decal needs to go, for example. So that's kind of makes it a little bit tougher just to be able to line things up there. The only thing we have to go by is the actual structures themselves, be it the big hoss, the victory lane, and so on. So with all that being said, as you look at this, you can tell, and it's all about perspective, like I said, these don't appear to line up in a straight line. Now, when you look at it from reality, they don't either, depending on where you're at. Now, you almost have to know, like, say, for example, if these posts aren't exactly in the same spot as they are in reality, based on where you're seated. So if we knew exactly where the seat was that we're standing at, we'd be able to get a better perspective. We don't have that to our advantage. We could probably acquire that if we were to, you know, take the steps, I guess, to be able to do so. But from what I've seen, and based on everything that we've got as far as the LiDAR set properly and so on, we know that this is, you know, what it's going to look like. Right, and that's the main point that I'm trying to make there. The LiDAR doesn't lie. But like I said, there's no way to determine, like, even all these grass logos, anything that's otherwise flat, we have no marks on the LiDAR to say, yep, that's where that goes, right? So we have to rely on, you know, either video footage or still imaging, I guess, to say, okay, we know the structure is in this spot, you know, where's that decal, I guess, in comparison to that. So these are just some things I'd point out, I guess, as far as you might have to take a closer look at the positioning of things. We'd have to get like a one-to-one perspective from Sandbox to say, okay, I know where that spot is right here, I know that's there, and so on. You use, you know, basically static structures that we know and can confirm based on the LiDAR, and you know, go from there. But the other point I want to make here is the structures that we do know based on LiDAR, we can definitely tell that the victory lane does not 100% line up, say, parallel perfectly, you know, like a perfect tunnel. You know, looking from this perspective here, it's kind of offset. So that was one of the things I took into consideration as to, you know, compensating for the skewing of the texture that we have for the infield object, and that's where I came to this conclusion that the victory lane is more to this direction from the hoss, so it's not like perfectly lined up, for example. So like this edge is lined up with this edge and so on, you know, based in this perspective. So that was just confirming to me that the LiDAR is still correct, and the textures that we've got applied that are in a flat orientation based on the, you know, basically like the infield and the start finish line and so on, probably are not, you know, they're not in the right position. It might need to be adjusted one way or the other, and we can definitely do that. So things like that can be adjusted. So this is its own TSD that can be shifted to get things to line up, more. So there's room for adjustment. I guess is the only point that I'm trying to make. Yeah, so coming on in, how we doing? Coming in hot. I saw you. I heard that. I like giving that tire squeal. It's one of the newer ones that I have had applied to the sound alerts there. It's good to know that those are working still. No, and that's the other point that I was trying to point out, Torch. I wasn't, and it goes back to when I was doing the score tower, right? I came into the same conclusion, I guess, as far as when I was trying to zero out the positioning of the victory lane. It's like, well, the LiDAR's not wrong. And going back to what we knew was the case as far as all that skewing that does exist in that satellite image. And that's just because of panning around in Google, I guess, to get the areas that you need to stitch together. Things are going to shift. So this is how much it's shifted, based on what I've shown. So just to get a closer look here, if I haven't shown that, you can see how much that shifted over. As you can see this, these stands here, the whole victory lane is shifted more this way. So that's how much the texture for that infield object is kind of offset. It's kind of wrong in that regard. So there's definitely some adjustments that'll need to be made there so it lines up more with the LiDAR. Keeping in mind that a lot of the LiDAR, going back to the 3ds Max scene, there were some substitute or temporary objects that we put, the simple objects to highlight, I guess, as far as these areas here. But those are based on that, that misskewed texture, I guess, on that infield object. So they're going to need to be adjusted for sure. We need to get the proper positioning of those buildings based on LiDAR. That's the main thing. So it's going to have to be tweaked on that infield object there just a little bit more to get rid of some of that skewing of it. So the infield object, as far as the way it's mapped, that texture is made, is going to have to be adjusted, I guess, to accommodate all that shifting and skewing. And it seems to be primarily in this direction, just in this direction, as far as on the x-axis, not so much the y. Yeah, so I think once those things get adjusted in such a fashion, I think it'll be a lot better. Yeah, everything's based off LiDAR. That's yeah. I'm hoping I'm making that abundantly clear. The LiDAR, we've got it to where it needs to be. The scaling of that is proper. And we made notes of all that. I'm just kind of summarizing, I guess, as far as what we came to know is true. With the way the texturing of the flat objects, as far as that ground plane texture, I guess, as far as to line that LiDAR up, we already, yeah. So the fact that we know this, we have to, compensate, I guess, for that. It really needs to be adjusted, as far as either that infield object or that overall ground plane that was used, I guess, to design the geometry of the track. That needs to be adjusted. To move forward, I guess, and do everything properly, I guess, as far as all these garage areas and things like that, these garage structures, whatever, that would need to be adjusted. That's two objects now that I've done, I guess, as far as to apply to the infield there, that we've come to that conclusion. It's still holding true, I guess, as far as that it's not 100% lined up. The infield, at least, anyway. Which is going to throw everything else off if we continue to build the additional structures that are in the infield, I guess, as far as in the same fashion. Right, and that's what I'm already pointing out. You're pointing out what I've basically already gone over, Torch. But yeah, as far as the way it's stitched, we know that as you move around in Google Earth, if you ever use that image that is in Google Earth, it's going to skew ever so slightly. You have to take that into consideration, I guess, as far as when you're doing that. And we're noticing that more and more, even as we do these objects. So I guess the other point that I'm trying to make here is before we do any other objects in the infield, that infield object needs to be adjusted to get rid of all that skewing or miscuing for that matter, I guess, as far as of that texture to it, so that things line up. So really what you can do at this point, since we know the LiDAR is correct, we would need to make the texture so that, say like this area, and the way you would go about it is you'd probably have to piece it, you know, like looking at the image, I guess, from a top-down perspective, for example. In fact, I'll go this way. But looking at it from a top-down perspective, the way you would do the texture for that, you would have to slice it out, you know, and piece it back together so that it lines up. So you're more or less going to have to force it to line up with what your objects are, like the victory lane and the score tower, is what's going to happen. Just to get rid of that skewing. That's the only way to be able to accomplish that. And the fact that it's not a ton offset, you know, as far as the miscue, but you can definitely notice that it is there. Just by looking at here, like what I was pointing out here, the fact that these seating areas or whatever should be on both edges here, and the fact that that's how much it shifted the whole building here based on LiDAR, which we know is in the right spot, is shifted this direction. So this here, what you would have to happen from a top-down perspective, like I said, you would have to cut that area out and piece it back together so that area where the victory lane is that we know is correct is in the right spot. That's the only way you're going to be able to correct it. That I can you know, and you still have real world information based on the original sat image. It would just have to be shifted into the proper direction is all. Yeah, the fact that Google Earth, when you stitch these things together, does tend to shift that. That's just the nature of that beast, I guess, as far as that. But you have to take that into consideration, I suppose, as you're doing that, is all. And you'll be able to notice that. It'll come to a realization, I guess, as far as once you start applying other things, lining up the LiDAR, I guess, with it, and noticing not everything 100% lines up. Those areas should give you a clue, I guess, as far as to say, okay, this is how much I need to adjust the texture, the flat texture of the sat image, I guess, to that LiDAR. Bot was being coy. 69. Yeah, is that what you... That's pretty funny. 69 units of fluid. Giggity. Yeah, I almost need a giggity one there, I guess, huh? Okay, so yeah, I'm just kind of I'm not like I said, I don't really have anything much more to go on other than to just kind of show, and a lot of it's going to be a review, so it's probably going to be a good review, I guess, as far as how to apply access to different areas of the track and maintain, I guess, other areas of the track as, you know, being locked down. So that's probably the next thing I'll go into. Other than those changes, I guess, to the infield texturing and maybe to the actual model of the infield itself, I mean, that's... But like I said, I do feel, I can't say it enough, that needs to be adjusted before moving forward, I guess, with building any other objects to that, because otherwise you're going to be, you know, having to fudge them. And as much as I hate to use that term, but that's basically what I've been doing. These last two objects that I've made for the infield, you know, we've had to kind of compensate for that known texture skew of that infield, and it's not fun, to be honest. It kind of throws you off, I guess, as far as like that. It just doesn't look right, and it doesn't, you know, when you look at it. But you can see the consistency in the amount of skewing that's there, because between what I've shown here for the victory lane and also the score tower here, you can see how much that shifted in the wrong direction. And mostly, like I said, on the X. Not probably so much the Y as much as it is probably the X. I'm not going to say there isn't any skewing is on the Y, but the fact that it's so much wider, you know, as far as the way things are applied this way than it is this way, just speaking of the infield itself, that makes sense. It really does make sense, I guess, to when you think of how you would take like a piece of you know, really thin plastic. You know, if you ever taken like a like a bread wrapper, you know, as far as for a loaf of bread. And when you've got a decal or a graphic that's on it, and when you stretch it out, how much that graphic is going to skew, that's basically the same thing that's happening with the way this texture is applied to the infield object. So, getting an image that looks good without being... Well, see, that's the thing. As I was already mentioning, Torch, what you'd have to use is the same image that you've... I wouldn't find another image, right? I would use the same image that is already there. Just like I said, you would have to manually fabricate it. And maybe I can go into this, I guess, a little bit too, as I was saying, just to kind of explain what would have to happen. So if we go into the actual... and I think maybe I kind of get what you might be saying as far as if you were to make a totally separate texture for the infield object itself as opposed to using ground. Because I think as it is currently, this infield object is using that ground plane. So if you wanted to use that same image, right, that same texture for the ground plane as your infield, what would have to happen, and I guess I'll go through that. Let's go ahead and explain what would have to happen. What that is, that might be a good thing to cover here. So if we go with our ground plane, we got the two different ones there. They're overhead. The one has transparency in it, one does not, and that's was done for a good reason. Okay, so overhead. Where are we at? Was it overhead or Texas? I always forget what the heck the name of the darn thing was. Texas ground plane, infield. So that's the object itself. All right, where's the darn texture? Overhead. Here it is. So we got the overhead and overhead 2. Now I'd have to open up to see which one was which again, but I'll know once I open it as far as which ones we want to actually work with. I'm gonna close these out since we've already compared that. So we need to look at and make sure I'm in the right folder. Cool. Okay, so we got Texas overhead. I think it's this one. I could be wrong. Yeah, this one here, this is what Torch was mentioning as far as this is a 4096 by 4096 texture, and the fact that it is a pretty chunky boy. We don't 100% need the entire texture. That was only used for the initial track build as far as the geometry, you know, laying the geometry down and such. Yeah, this is the one we don't want. So this is the one that has transparency that we use to line up the object to the background image, which are two entirely separate processes. We won't go back into that. We already know what down there, but we made these cutouts into here in the form of a TGA to have transparency to it so we could line the two different ones up there to know for sure that we were where we needed to be. So close that one out. We're going to open up our 2. So we got the Texas overhead 2. And what I'm going to do is make either a bitmap or TGA out of that. Doesn't really matter. Where'd it go? So this overhead 2 is what we want. Yeah, so the one that has the cutouts in there, we wouldn't want to go by that necessarily because it has, yeah, not useful, I guess, for what we were trying to do, I guess, as far as creating a texture for that infield. Okay. Yeah, so this is the one we want to go by. So what I would do, take this same texture, and you probably have this in the form of maybe even in layers, but you know, just based on what I've got available to me, this is what I'm gonna just kind of demonstrate. So what I want to do is change this to, I'm just gonna do bitmap. I'll save this as a bitmap, and we'll just keep that right into our track minute directory. That's fine, just for demonstration purposes here. And then what we would do, close this out. What we would do is open this up in our favorite paint program, in my case, PaintShop Pro. And then what would need to happen, first of all, what I'd want to do is isolate just that infield portion of it. We don't need the rest of it at this point. So we can make just an infield texture, for example, I guess, as far as to make it for that object. So the way I would go about this with my PaintShop Pro here is to take, for example, no, that's my clone brush, my bad. I'm going to use my magic wand, and I'm going to do a point-to-point, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. And then just loosely go around with this infield part here, just to cut out what I don't really need. And I can always fill this in I'm doing this very primitively, just to kind of, I would probably take my time with it, but just to kind of give you an idea of the approach I would take to this, just to kind of get from this initial texture here what I need, take out what I don't. So yeah, I'm doing this rather, I said, primitively, but you get hopefully you'll get the point. Just to kind of isolate this here. I can't even tell where I started that. Yeah, that should be good right there. So I'm just isolating that area, so what I'm going to do is do a copy that, and I'm going to edit paste this as a new image. This is all I would roughly need to use here, right? And I can clean this up now from here. What I'd want to do is probably make a duplicate of this, so I have two to go by here, just one to fall back on. I'll copy this and paste this as another new image. Okay, and I'll keep this on standby. And then what I was basically referring to, what would have to happen is, now that I've laid it out this way, it'd be kind of tough, I guess, to figure out which direction this needs to go. So initially, my thought is, as far as the fact that we know this area here is shifted more to this direction, we need to bring it this way. So what you do, and granted, this is all primitive, right? I don't have any key points, I guess, as far as to know how much it would need to be shifted. So you'd almost have to make, take that infield object that you have created and do what you need to it, and apply this new texture to it, get it into a power of 2, get that mapped to that infield object, and then that way you can adjust your texture based on that. Yeah, so the fact that, Torch, if you've got that infield object, that is a separate piece in here, right? And currently it is mapped to the ground plane that I've got open there that I chunked that out. What you'd have to do is construct a new texture to apply to that infield object, and then be able to adjust the texture from there to that model of that infield object. But the way you would do it, the way I was trying to describe, is knowing how much that is skewed based on that proper positioning of the victory lane. We know, for example, that it's shifted to it. So what I would do is take it like this, right? And then I would cut that out. Actually, probably even better way to do this is to do it like this. I'm going to copy that, paste that as a new image, or new layer, my bad. And it's going to be shifted, that's fine. There's ways we can get around that. So what I'll do in this new layer that I created, so basically of that area that is selected there, I created a new, like this. So what I'll do in this new chunk here, just so we can get that lined up with the other piece. And this is the same idea that we followed with that other overhead that we've got there. I won't go into that, but this is kind of the same process there. So I'm going to chunk out a little piece there. This will help me to be able to line that up with the other piece that we used it as a donor. Right? So on this piece, I'm still in here. Now all I need to do is take it here, select all that. Now I can shift this where it needs to be. It's right there. So by cutting that out there, it helped me line that up to that image that I had borrowed it from, if you will. That's pretty good. There's not too much, so maybe a little bit on the up and down as far as on the y-axis. Just ever so slightly, but let's go ahead and do this. Shift it this way. Oops, man, I screwed it all up there. This is probably one of the things that's kind of limited to with Paint Shop in comparison to, say, CS6 or Photoshop. Being able to move it incrementally. Go a little bit off that way. Let's go back up this. So you kind of get the idea. That's actually probably not too bad. So you kind of get the idea. So now that we've got this where it needs to be, what would have to happen is going from this donor part of it here. Oops. So going from the donor part there, you would have to piece it all in there and get this lined up to where it needs to be, right? And then apply that to the infield objects until it lines up, I guess, with what is, you know, in the proper position already as far as that score tower and the victory lane. Once you can do that, then you can be able to build all the other structures around that more. You thought about taking a ground plane image and go a bit beyond the infield a bit, and then, well, yeah, that might work. Whatever, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is whatever you can, however which way you'd go about it. But like you said, as far as like using that ground plane and using that just for the infield, you don't need all that other business going on with it, right? Unless you're speaking of possibly toning that 4096 of the ground plane, you know, that overhead image that I went by. If you're toning that down, I'm just saying this is the approach that I would take. I'm not saying this is the way you would have to go about it, but the way you're describing it, yeah, you could probably take the mapping of that texture onto the infield object, you know, as far as the UV coordinates of it in 3ds Max, and you might be able to get it close, you know, based on that U and V. But if it doesn't, this is another approach to take to it, to just create, you know, isolate it down to, you know, just the way I did it, as far as to just isolate it down to what you need for the infield object. Get rid of all the other noise, I guess, around that, because you don't need that, number one. Get it to a power of 2, apply that image to it. You know, if you don't take that approach, that's totally up to you. This is the way I would go about it at this point. Because that infield object is still, that you've got, is still a pretty solid piece, right? So if you, it's just a matter of getting a proper texture applied to it so that everything is more in the position based on LiDAR. That's going to be another big chunk of what we need to get lined up, I guess, as far as all the infield objects in that area. And we know there's a lot of texture skewing in there. So the way to correct that would be this is just one way to go about it. But still finicky? Yep. I think you might be still on a little bit of a rip or tear, I guess, as far as what happened last week. Torch was just on fire. So yeah, just to finish up what you meant there was to apply a flat rectangle plane for the model, because that does not need to be rounded. Yeah, I mean, that could work, but when you, I guess is when you mention it that way, you're gonna have, you know, that's gonna be following the same way, I guess, Papyrus used to do it, where they would just make an image, or not an image, but a model, I guess, for the infield that would just square it off, right? So you're gonna have areas, it's gonna be polys that you're not gonna see, right? I mean, you can trans them out for sure, you know, based on the texture model. So that's another approach. But then you run into the, you know, having the excess of polys. That's why I was saying that model that you've got for this infield object is still pretty solid in itself, as far as that's based on the track geometry and so on. It may need some adjustment on those ends there to fill up this gap. That's minor. I mean, you can go by that 3ds Max scene that you've got for that, to be able to line that up better. I mean, that should be not much of a problem. I wouldn't start from scratch, I guess, on the infield model is what I'm saying. Whatever approach I guess you end up deciding to do, that's totally up to you. But the approach that I would take is just apply a different texture, and that's why I was going through the process of you know, demonstrating that way. And just so instead of recreating the model, just recreate the texture that goes to it. But I think at the end of the day, using that ground plane, that overhead texture, that's a 4096 that we use to build the track geometry itself from the ground up, we don't need that anymore. As far as moving forward, I guess, as far as texturing the object, that's basically what this, and I can confirm that actually as far as on that infield object. So this infield object has what texture? I need to humor myself again anyway. So just let's go into here. I'm going to go into object view, placement, and grab this infield, and the name of that is, oh, that's the inner tire walls. Okay, go to our list here. So we should have, let's see, where's the infield for this thing? Is it Texas infield? Some of the names of these things might be a little bit. So we got the ground outer and the Texas infield, right? So here's the infield object. So it's Texas infield. But just to confirm, and just kind of humor myself too, on what is applied to that, it should be that that overhead, which is the huge texture, which we don't need to have that all applied to it. That's why I was saying to chunk that out. Texas infield. So yeah, just to confirm that we can open this up with Notepad, and we can confirm that it does have Texas overhead too. That's what we're using as far as our donor. And the fact that this Texas overhead too is 10.6 megabytes, we don't need it that big. We don't need it that big. So that's why that's the only reason why I was demonstrating as far as to make a separate texture and build that. And even if you just go that route and take that same idea what you were mentioning, Torch, as far as to apply that new texture and see what you can get by UV mapping it, as far as extend it beyond the actual model, for example, that may. But what you're going to end up having on the ends is where it's going to start repeating. You know, so on the rounded, you know, as far as the model is concerned, right? Regardless if you use a rectangular shape piece or just the one that's still, or that you already have to work with, when you extend that UV mapping and gets past, you know, the outer edges there, especially on the x-axis here, for example, you're going to get that repeating texture, and that's not going to look right as far as on the ends of the model, regardless if it's the rectangle. So that's why, to me, it would just make more sense, I guess, as far as just to go the approach that I'm showing, just to kind of take all the skewing that we know has existed in there and adjust the texture, you know, a phase at a time, and apply that to the model, load it up in Max or even in Sandbox, and, you know, ensure that, I guess, it all lines up. I mean, it would take a few steps, I guess, to be able to do that for sure. But I think it would be worth it, I guess, to do that, to make sure everything is lining up the way it needs to be. I just don't feel that you're going to get the proper result just by stretching out past the infield model, regardless of which model you use, to get that to line up properly. Yeah, so this is the approach I would take to it anyway. This, and again, it's to each your own, I guess, as far as what direction you want to go with it, but that's the way I would go. You could do it with 2 polys. Why would you do it with 2 polys? Yeah, you kind of confused me there. Model's too short corner to corner. Again, you lost me, I guess, as far as what you mean by that. I think you should be able to, with no problem, I guess, as far as to be able to, and without opening the model itself, I don't have that raw model, I guess, to me. It's having that raw model, I guess, too, and I guess I could, I'm not going to do that, but you've already got that at your disposal, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm not going to, you know, go ahead and recreate that when you've already got it at your disposal. That original model there, I think, should be more than plenty to be able to recreate a new texture, I guess, to apply to it. So just to remove that assignment that the infield object has with that overhead too. That's the only point that I'm trying to make. Reassign it to a new texture. That way you can totally just get rid of the overhead, the Texas overhead and overhead too, pretty much completely. Because even with what you've done previously, I guess, with the outer, to make that separate texture with the signage, we really don't need those anymore. Just remove that assignment, I guess, to that model, but still use that model. You know, and if in the process of doing that, if you find that you have to edit the model, I guess, to the infield object, I guess, to get it to line up properly, I guess, to, you know, to fill in those gaps like I was showing, that's about the only thing you really need to do. You know, as far as all that there, I don't think that's that would be too tough to do. I feel like I'm just rambling on too much about that. I mean, however direction you want to go, I guess, as far as to get that infield object corrected, I'll just leave that up to you. I just know the way I would do it. And as like I said, to each their own as far as what method. There's not one wrong or right way. The only thing I can point out, I guess, as far as what I know from what you've mentioned, as far as I don't think that's going to be the way to do it. I guess as far as just to stretch it the texture onto the model, I guess, past it. And if I'm even understanding and comprehending as far as what you're mentioning about that, that's the way I comprehend it. So if I'm comprehending it wrong, definitely correct my own misunderstanding. I'm just trying to help here, based on, you know, what I've done in the past, I guess, with these types of things. This would actually open up a pretty good topic of conversation as far as, like, you know, what approach would want to take, I guess, as far as to accomplish what would need to be done here. I don't think there's really one, like I said, a wrong or right way. It's whatever gets you to the needed endpoint. Okay. Yeah, hopefully this makes sense as far as what I was trying to show here, to just isolate that, and then you'd have to chunk these out in separate layers, knowing, I guess, as far as which ones are, you know, so even where the score tower is, this is something else I think of here. So we'll go into that main image here again, have that lined up roughly. So if we go in here and chunk this out, actually, so I'm gonna do copy, paste that into another new layer. Gonna be off, which is expected. This. Now, turn this one off, and then we're gonna. We don't really got much to go by here. Let's see here. Let's try. Got this building right here, so let's chunk out a little bit of this building. And this layer. Okay, am I in the right layer? Hold on. Oh, wait a minute. That's layer 2. My bad. Okay, I see what I did. So I didn't. That's layer 2. My bad. So I need to go over this way. Let's see. What can we use here? So finding an area, I guess, to be able to chunk out of here to kind of get something to line up here. You tend to want to use something that's relatively squared off. I'm gonna try this area here. So let's take this out there, and we can line that up with our parent image here, like so. We're in that layer, and this is over this way. So you can see where that is right here. So we want to line this up over here. That. See how close we are. Oh, still a little bit off there. Okay, so we gotta shift it this way. Yeah, we got nothing to go. Yeah, I guess we do got this here to go by. So this is what I mentioned as far as, you know, you would have to physically shift things in place, you know, as far as to get rid of that skewing that we know exists onto that model, because the texture itself, based on this set image that we took from Google Earth, this is all originally from Google Earth, it does have skewing in it. So to get rid of it, this is what would need to be done. So I'm initially putting him in the same position as the original, and then from there, with these individual parts that I've got there, I can shift those independently to get them to where they need to be, you know, as far as like that. So it all lines up as far as the node structures that are in the infield. They will line up with the structures that, you know, that we do have lined up properly with the LiDAR. So it's, in this case, we do have to fudge it. And I hate using that word, but that's really what it's coming down to, because we know there is texture skewing in that satellite image from Google Earth. And we got to get an idea of how much of that skewing is based on how we look at where the positioning of the models based on the LiDAR is in the right position. So that's what we've got to go on as a reference to be able to get the texture lined up with that. Hopefully that all makes sense. Especially the model was talking about making a new model. See, you wouldn't have to make a new model. I guess that's what I was trying to, that's the point I was trying to make. You wouldn't need a new model. And especially out of a flat plane. Yeah. See, I don't think using a flat plane is going to get you. So I get what you were saying. So I did comprehend that properly. So just even what's shown here, because as far as with that infield object, when it's square like this, right, you're going to have polys out here. You're going to have it all floating out there. To me personally, I think that's cheesy. I think to make a shape like what you've already got there, you know, that's in that is in that formation, I guess, of the what it should actually be is more proper. And again, that's just my own take on it. I think that's more than sufficient. It just needs, you know, a texture that's adjusted to it. That's all. So there's no need to make a new model. And again, you can feel free to do what you want, right? It's your build. I'm just kind of giving you insight, I guess, as far as it, rather than making it a more simplistic model, you know, which is going to have all this nonsense, I guess, as far out in here in the corners. Because even if you were to try to, you know, pinch these down, you know, to kind of remove that, it's going to affect the way the texture is mapped to that. It's going to, you know, so I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud as far as what I know, what I've dealt with in the past. And you would definitely notice this, I guess, as you do these things for yourself. I just don't think that's going to be the best result, honestly. And you could totally prove me wrong, but I mean, it's like from what I initially comprehend what you're saying, the way of going about it, I don't think that's going to be, because that's typically the way papyrus used to do the infield objects. Just make a simple flat rectangle plane, put a texture on it. That was usually crappier than what we've got available to us now, but I mean, it's and call it a day, you know. But really, nothing really lined up there. Our key to this one is here. We want this to be, you know, to line up, I guess, as far as so we can put the texture, you know, the structures where everything is. That's going to line up 100%, I guess, with the texture, or at least as close to 100% as we can get it. We have that ability to be able to do that, and this is just one way that I know to be able to accomplish that. And again, this is only my way, so hopefully this kind of gives somewhat of an idea of what I'm talking about as first. So what you would end up having is, at the end of the day, is you would have different segments of this donor piece that we've chunked out, I guess, as far as that main image, and you'd be able to shift these independently in separate layers. So as you would recreate that texture, you would be able to see where it lands on the model and see how well it lines up with the structures that you get applied to the infield. In this case, we do have that score tower and the victory lane to go by now to see, you know, and I think once we get those two critical pieces lined up, I guess, with the texture reapplied, I guess, to that infield model, everything else is going to line up with the LiDAR as well. It's not going to be like sporadic where it's going to be, you know, one spot's going to be more this way than that way. I think it's going to be more on the X, maybe a little bit more on the Y, than it is just going to be, you know, kind of random as far as like, well, this one needs to go this way and that way. This one only needs to go this way and all that type of thing. But I think by doing it in chunks like this, you'll be able to probably tell what's going to work better than in this fashion. All right, I need to finish adjusting this one this way. How far off am I? Actually, not too bad right there. So we need to go. So I had. Oops, come on, zoom in. Let me see here. We are. So I chunked out. Whoops, I moved that quite a bit. Okay. Yeah, so you can see how much it's off there. So it's just a matter of getting it lined up. Now I'm just putting it initially in the same position here, so I know what my baseline is. Oh, that's way too far. Yeah, so I got that piece there to line up with. I got several reference points, I guess, to go by. And this is the only pain in the butt about it, I guess, I suppose. But I feel it is necessary to get rid of that skewing that's in that texture. So without doing this, you're going to have the same problem no matter what, if you make a new model or not. Because this skewing that we do know exists in the texture, this would still have to be done, honestly. No matter what you do with the model. Trying to get this lined up and the heck way does this gotta go? That way? Okay. It just doesn't seem like it's that far off. Good grief. Would you hopefully you kind of get the point. You kind of get the idea here, though. Good lord. It seems like I can move it a lot, and it just tends to... I'm getting there, so I gotta go more this way. Oh, come on. I didn't move it that much. Yeah, so it's in two directions. Both X and Y, and it's like... From what I can see in there, it doesn't look like it needs to go so darn much. Ah, shoot, I got the wrong layer. The wrong layer. Okay. Anyway, I wasn't going to go through this. You know, you kind of get the idea, I guess, as far as what would have to happen here. The known areas that we know, the areas that we know that are off, and there's probably more than just these two spots, you would need to chunk them out in a similar fashion like I have there. So what you have at the end of the day is different chunked areas, I guess, of the same thing there. And once you got these lined up here, you could merge these back together, I guess, with your parent image to get rid of the holes in it, and then just go from there. But still maintain, I guess, as far as a layered template, I guess, of that, so you can shift those different sections, I guess, of that to get them these different areas to line up with the structures that you know are already there. But like I said, I think once you get these other areas, I guess, lined up, like the score tower and the victory lane, everything else should fall into place, because you'll be able to yeah, I don't know how else to... I don't feel like I'm probably explaining it the correct way, but this is what would need to be. There still needs to be something done to that texturing of the model, regardless if you use a flat rectangle or, you know, a DAE model structure, I guess, a model of the infield. Regardless of which way you go about it, the texture still needs to be correct. That's the only point I want to make to that. Hopefully that's enough. So that was probably, you know, a good point of discussion there, but I think, you know, there's a couple of different ways to go about it. I think the other thing I want to focus on here, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is to kind of show. So there's one down. That's the main jackpot too. Yeah, so I think the main thing I want to go over here on with this is how to gain access to this. So as we came to find out, I guess, as far as when we were in testing mode, had the track in the sim, we weren't able to get access to the victory lane. So one of the ways you go about getting that access to it is you need to open the segment up. So as it probably stands here, as we'll notice here, this is what I'll get in here a little bit closer. And a lot of this is a review. So highlight the segment and or segments that you want to have access to on the left side. So taking into consideration the fact that it does involve the X section, right? So the fact that this segment here is not open on the left, I'll kind of show this here. Currently, it is not open on the A, so you'll see a check mark in here. So the fact that neither one of these is check mark, we would want to open on the left. So that's considering the direction of the track. So as far as this segment goes, for example, this would be left and this would be right. And that basically takes into account where the center line is. So are you to the left of the center line or the right of the center line? In this case, we want to open on the left so we can have access to this area. The way this segment is designed right now is it's not open on the left. So if we open this up, now it'll be check mark. Now when we save this PTF and load, put this PTF into the game track directory, we'll now have access to this area. Now what I did notice here is when we went through here, do we want to have all this open? That's the other question. Keeping in mind, even though there's a visual opening here, it's not you can't drive through this here because it has that wall property. I think Torture mentioned that earlier, because as far as that was done intentionally, so that you didn't have to split that segment to get that segment open. We've got the one segment that's to include down here too. The only place that is open on the pit wall, and this is to reduce the number of split segments that are in, you know, such an area. The lesser amount of segments that you can have, the better. It kind of comes into play. But also keeping in mind that as long as that segment that you're creating this opening for is more than 6 meters, which is the distance of, you know, the hitbox, if you want to call it, for the vehicles. You definitely want to make sure that. So all that has been taken into consideration, you know, that, and I can confirm this. I probably did this before, but just to kind of reconfirm this anyway, that this is at least 6 meters or more. This is more than sufficient, I guess, to be able to have this opening here, and still limiting the number of segments that you would have, you know, as far as geometrically. Yeah, so far it does, doesn't it? Yeah, so far. So what I want to do is I'm going to open up my linear guide, rusty dusty linear guide, and I'll always open up in the center of the track. Kind of over exaggerate this, and we're going to set this to 6 meters, or at least to see what this is actually set to here. So we're going to go this. We're going to set this white square. Zoom in on this, get more precise reading, and to see how this measures. So if it's at least 6 meters or more, then we're in good shape. And you'll get the reading for that. Yeah, sure. There it is. So it'll show up. It's kind of hidden by the. Get this skewed up here so I can show you. There it is. So we can see right here that this segment here, and I don't have 100% lined up, is more than 6 meters. So we're at 6.74 meters. You know, give or take. So the fact that it is more than 6 meters in length there is more than sufficient as far as what we've shown in the past. I guess as far as to make sure you don't have any erroneous black flags, or the way the starts and restarts, you know, as far as green flags and yellow flag conditions are affected. You definitely want to make sure your segments, so this is a little bit of review, definitely want to make sure that your segments are not less than 6 meters in length from head to tail. In this case, this would be the head, that's the tail. And it doesn't matter if it's a straight section or a curved section. You want to make sure that it is more than 6 meters. So these little slivers, if it was less, say at half the distance here, you don't want that. You definitely don't want that. Stay away from that at all costs. Alright, Torch. New problem. So yeah, we're just confirming, I guess, as far as the fact that is the case here. So all we've done so far, and we can probably do the same thing for this opening here too, is to open that on the left so we can have access to all of this here. Now, again, with all that being said here, if we don't open, say, this area, and the fact that we still have some victory lane here, there might be this section. I don't know how to explain that. So at this segment here, if we were to come into victory lane, we may not have access to that if we don't open this on the left as well. But since, you know, the way I look at this here too, as long as this here still has collidable property as far as that W section, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So even though you're able to access here, you won't be able to come out here. What might still be an option for anybody that does come in infield here is to be able to get access to the infield here. This is what I was mentioning before. Sometimes it does help to put what I like to consider booby traps in here to eliminate the possibility for, and I think of this from a league standpoint. You'll get drivers that'll try to, what's the word I'm looking for, to, kind of might have lost the words. I can't even think of the word, but just to find areas where they gain an advantage. So in qualifying sessions as we know it, within Inter 2003, they're usually singular, you know, as far as like they're just one person on the track, so they're able to manipulate the integrity of the track by being able to gain advantage if there's more access to the infield. So you can potentially, at least anyway, be able to get a faster lap time instead of actually driving on the track. And there's no way for admins to necessarily be able to know that, because they can't see what that driver's doing during a qualifying session. So if you're going to have access to the infield, You want to be limited on how much access you're applying there, because if you make the whole entire infield, I guess, accessible, you're opening that up there, I guess, as far as for any driver, especially in a league setting, you know, being on a server, especially, to be able to do a qualifying lap within the infield and have a way faster lap than anybody else. So just keeping those types of things in mind is all. That's just the league participant, you know, kind of speaking of me, you know, working with such tracks with that were done, I guess, for the Sim Racing Association back in the day. We are talking the better part of 4 years ago, but I think it's still pretty relevant today. Still pretty relevant today. There's always someone's going to try to, I want to say eradicate, but that's not the word I'm looking for. There's a word that's on the tip of my tongue and I just can't. Anyway, I think y'all get what I get talking about. Yeah, most games don't, but see the fact that we do have the ability, especially with scratch-made tracks like this one here, to be able to open that up. Just as I was demonstrating, we have the option to be able to open this up, and what that does, the way this is designed, for example, this red line that's right here, that's an X section. Okay, so the end of the segment is really right here. Right? So as far as, but when you don't open it on the left, so the fact that this F section right here was really creating a boundary. This is where we noticed when we had it in testing mode, we weren't able to get past this green line that's right here. And that's because this segment, until we just did it here not too long ago, opened that up on the left edge. So now that's going to give us access to that all the way up to this X section. That's the way that's designed as far as opening that up on the left. So that's why I mentioned, as far as like, you want to be careful with what type of access that you're allowing, I guess, in the infield. So if you want to have access to the garage area, how much do you do that? Now, another way that could be, you know, just speaking of a booby trap of sorts, you could move this X section. I don't have the geometry unlocked, so I can't select it at the moment, but you could be able to move this X section more this way, for example, but there's not more of an advantage as far as access to the infield. So that's one way you could do it. There's plenty of other ways like that you can do that. You can add just random F sections throughout this here. So if I was to open this up on the left, and I don't want anybody to have access over to this side beyond the victory lane, I can add F sections in here, for example, even not to texture them, and that'll create a boundary. Even if it is just a W section as well, I guess, as far as with no texture, so it creates an invisible wall. So there's ways to set those types of booby traps so that that can be easily done. So like even with this one here, if we open this one on the left, I'm just demonstrating it this one as far as what can be done. But so I'm gonna open this on the left. So we got this open on the left. This will go all the way to this X section now. So we can be able to come through this opening, go all the way to this X section here, and this is as far as it'll let us go. So from here, here, and this opening right here. Oops, I didn't open this one yet. So from here, here, and here, this is all going to be open. So again, just to kind of elaborate what I was saying, if I wanted to put no access, I guess, beyond, I can say do this. I can go insert a W section. I can put this on an angle. Might be a little bit more limited, and this will create a boundary. I won't texture it or anything like that, but it'll create a boundary so that no other vehicles will be able to go beyond where this is at. And I can do this throughout here. That's just one way of applying a booby trap, for example, because as far as to not gain access. So if somebody were to come through here trying to do a lap within the infield, they would find out pretty quickly as far as like, whoop, you know, there's a wall here. So it's like, so it would, yeah. So even now that I think of this one, they might be able to find this hole here. You don't physically see that, but you might be able to. So I can't think of that word. That word I'm trying to mention is as far as to. I want to say eradicate, but that's not the word. But you know, if a driver were to come in through here and just stay up against this outside wall that they can see, and notice that there is a hole here, they could use that as an advantage potentially. And again, they wouldn't necessarily be able to see this invisible wall, but they would notice that they can only go so far the left, so they would just hug this this wall that they can see, and just keep that in mind as far as to give themselves some types of visual. Say, okay, I know where I can drive around this here and still try to gain an advantage. So these are just things that I've found that you have to take in consideration when you're opening up access to the infield. And keeping in mind, the whole idea is here, we don't want to split up these segments here at all. If the lesser that we have of these types of segments, the better. Even though that it is more than the 6 meters, we don't want a ton of them, right? Because as we've seen, we've shown this plenty of times before, the more of these short segments that you have, it's adding a more a denser compaction of polys in there already by default by doing that. So the more spread out that you have it in a segment, say like this, is going to be better. So even like segments like these, this is more optimal. This is probably the smallest you want to go with a segment for the most part. When you do have the necessity, I guess, to put a visual opening into here, this is the only way we can accomplish that, in making, having the collidable properties to the wall and make it more realistic. There is a way, I guess, of being, and Torch and I have talked about this before, I guess, as far as you could make this segment, just one long segment, not have this broken up like it is, and have a visual wall, I guess, to have here, but then you would have this whole entire section would be open, for example. That's what you would have to do. So the fact that we can isolate it this way, as long as you maintain that segment longer than 6 meters, then you're okay. I know I feel like I'm like a skipped record there, but that's a main point to make when you're building a track in this simulation. Do not make the segments shorter than 6 meters if you have to make a short segment at all. Is that the word? Circumvent? No, that's not the word. It starts with an E. I'm pretty sure it starts with an E, but no, circumvent is not the word. That could be maybe a decent. It'll come to me, I guess. Probably post stream, I'll think of it. I'll be like, son of a gun, anyway. Yeah, kind of at a loss of words today. I got a lot of things that are running through my mind lately, I guess, as far as things that have not manifested themselves yet. And it's sometimes hard, I guess, to separate that from what I'm doing here as compared to other things. Because I got things that are happening, I guess, with Farm Sim. Still trying to figure out things with things like House Flipper and American Truck Simulator. It's like, so I find myself, having to separate these things. And sometimes all the terminologies get jumbled together. It's just like, son of a gun, anyway. So, I probably won't keep that W section in there, but it does give you some ideas as being able to still restrict the access, even though we're opening those segments up there. Because like I said, the way we'll have this right now, let's do this. I'm gonna take this out. The way this is right now, like I said, from this segment all the way to this one I have highlighted is gonna be open all the way to this X section now. But it won't be open at this point, so that's another thing to take into consideration. So it shouldn't, and we'll be able to test this in the sim, it shouldn't be open beyond this segment up here. So you may not even need to put anything further into this segment, to kind of create a booby trap of sorts. Yeah, so by default, as far as the fact that this one here is not open on the left, that might already create a stopping point. So they only be able to go this far, for example. So that's basically just beyond this, trying to get a reference here as far as to know when it's I go into the sim to know where that's going to stop. But as long as it's before the, yeah, okay. I'm just making a mental note, I guess, as far as where that actually stops there. So if we were to save this PTF, put it in the sim, we'd be able to know exactly where that stopping point would be. So I'm going to leave it like that just for testing purposes here. So let's go ahead and save this as a PTF. New PTF. And we're going to name this one let's start this up there. So let's do open. How do I want to name this here? I don't want to name it too long. I mean, you can name it as long as you want to. You can have it. I just like to shorthand it, if you will. just do open PTF on left. Yep. PTF on. So I'm going to type it right. I'm going to kind of use camel lettering. Oh my goodness, I can't type for nothing today. There we go. So that's just going to kind of remind me of what's going on. So it's open PTF on left, so I kind of get a rough idea what's going on. I can also probably label it something more as far as Vic lane access. That would give me another, so let's do that. Let's do Vic lane access. Yeah, I'm going to use camel lettering on that too. Yeah, that sounds better. That way we know what's going on with this particular PTF save. There we go. And then just to confirm that that did save that. That should buy... let's see what I did. Vic lane access. I got all these PTFs in there I probably don't need. Yeah, here it is right here. So there's the PTF we just saved. We'll need to transfer this as well as the updated SMI model and texture for a game track so we can test that all out in the sim. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that right away. Speaking of, probably won't be able to see it because I don't have that screen up, but I'll probably think of that word. Like I said, probably post fact and be like, hey, gummit. I think the word, I think I just think of it. I think I was thinking it's exploit. So as far as being an exploit, that was the word. I knew it would come to me eventually. I said eradicated has nothing to do with that, but I knew it started with an E. That was the one thing that kept. So yeah, it basically becomes an exploit. But end users of things that are built in this fashion, they tend to try to exploit. I guess as far as the what they can use as an advantage to them, without other people being able to know. And like I said, if anybody that has raced in NASCAR Racing 2003, especially on a server with other drivers, the qualifying sessions, I mean, in most cases now I think they're run in a group. They kind of follow the same protocols that NASCAR does in reality. So they run qualifying sessions in a group as opposed to doing solo runs. But in the past, they used to run solo qualifying, and that's still that same dynamic and mechanic that does exist in NASCAR 2003 to run a solo run on a qualifying run. During that session, there's nobody else can know they can't see you as far as what you're doing. They can only tell by what kind of time you're getting, and a lot of times we've seen this in the past. You can see a big swing of how much better, I guess, a driver gets on their lap time, and a lot of that did boil down to the fact that there was infield access. Because you can, if you design it, I guess, in such a fashion and don't take precautions like I was mentioning there is that opportunity or that option for a driver to take the infield to try and do a lap around the track without actually using the racing surface. That's why it's important to put such things as checkpoints, as far as, what points that have to be gone through, I guess, as far as to make sure that someone is doing a proper lap, as well as making sure the infield access is opening that up anyway is maintained or done correctly. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So yeah, that was the word anyway. Was exploit. So as I'm jabbering here, I'm moving some things over. Doing this other monitor here, so we're just getting things prepared to be able to set this up to go into the sim. And we're going to test some of these theories out there. See what our new medallion logos look like on our front stretch wall there. I guess as far as in the game, you'll be able to see it in the sandbox for sure. And this will also help me test to see how well the adjustments that I've made to stream quality isn't going to make the system angry, that's for sure. Okay. So, this is our... Oh, okay, so I need the... Okay. Pick lane access. Don't need the SBX file. So, Sandbox creates... I'm gonna show this. I'll show this over here. So, Sandbox, when you save a persistence. So, these types of applications, they use a persistence. This SBX file, it does produce every time you do save a new PTF, but that SBX saves is just whatever settings that were applied to, like say the size of the camera view, what view the track was in prior to save. That's why I always like to go back to geometry view. That's probably another good point. I always find it more appropriate, I guess, to go back to geometry view every time you save. Not only does it save time on how the track save. I've never kind of understood this. It's always been kind of a weird thing, I guess, with Sandbox. So depending on if you're in track surface decal view or track object view, trackside object view, any other view besides geometry, it tends to load the track in or save it slower for some reason. Not 100% sure why that is, but be it the fact that even in the geometry view, all the objects are loading in much the same, it's rendering all in the same fashion as it would be. But this is another good point. So that SBX file that it creates, that Sandbox creates by default, kind of saves a lot of those different types of settings. And Torch comes back and yet another jackpot. Is he going to go on another roll here? I know I kind of took away some of his fun there last week, I guess, as far as I'm going to maintain, I guess, as far as not to do that. There's something else I wanted to try here too, so probably before the end of stream, there was something new that I acquired here. So we might have taken a little bit of a break prior to testing these things out in the sim there. I want to try that out there. So if I tend to forget, y'all can kind of make a point, I guess, that can remind me. It's like, what was that you wanted to show us? And it's kind of a little cool thing. It's just a little cool thing, I guess, as far as when we go into intermission. And it's nothing that you can interact with, I guess, as far as directly, as far as like, I've tried Stream Raiders. I know some of you that have joined the streams here have seen me show like Stream Raiders. That's kind of a fun thing. Then you're able to put units on the battlefield. We can fight little 8-bit characters, I guess, on the battlefield and stuff like that. It's kind of along the same lines that I've found here, but it involves more of the chat than it does anything. So it's kind of keeping things more integrated and interactive, I guess, with the actual channel than it does not. So alright, so I'll continue moving these things over. It's not a whole lot. I'm making sure I get the right files. Maybe so. Yeah, that's two big ones. So GG's on that. That's actually one an emote that I have under consideration there. I don't want to give too much away with that, but as far as being able to get to that 25 and unlocking that next emote slot, that's the general design that I have for an emote. It's kind of it's a hybrid GG and rigged. So that's all I'm going to say about that. This is to give you an idea. Alright, so I need to move over. So I need the Vic lane axis. It's probably does make a good point too, as far as like the way you name your PTF saves is going to help you being able to find the appropriate one, as opposed to like looking at the actual date of it. So having both the date and what you named it as to confirm that you do have exactly the proper one there is always helpful. Copy that. Move that over to our game track directory. Definitely going to have lesser files because we only keep what we absolutely need to have in the game track directory. Our track edit folder definitely has a lot more stuff in it, like that bitmap that I created for the overhead, than what our game track directory is going to have. Alright, we're going to back up this PTF from last week, our game track directory. So a lot of this I know you all can't see, but it's just all busy work. Whoops, crap. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I already got it back up in there, that's why. What am I doing now? I gotta get rid of the other backup that I had, so I don't need that in there anymore. What the heck? Yeah, I do. Okay, so I got the one from the week before that. Okay, cool. We don't need that in there then. Take that out. Now I can back this one. Alright, let's try that again. backed up. Now I got to rename that PTF or that Victor Lane access that I created here. I need to name that the same as the our track folder name. And just copy the name of track folder. And I realize a lot, not all of you can see this, but let me see if I can, let me do this here. You can actually see what the heck I'm doing here. I don't have a button. I need to do that. I need a stream deck or something, that's for sure. That's, yeah, so this is to kind of show you what I'm doing here. So this is on the game track directory. I'm going back and forth between that and our track edit folder, for example. So all I've done is taken, in our game track directory, I'm naming that PTF, so I've copied, do the motions here again, copying the name of that track folder. That's, we need to have the PTF the same name as the folder, so that we can ensure, I guess, that PTF is going to load. So the way the game reads it, as far as it reads the folder, PTF, cam, anything else as far as that's related to that track. And this is why sometimes we get the could not load track if we don't have these named properly. So, let alone, I guess, as far as that there is a problem with the PTF itself, as far as, you know, the internals of it, as far as how we save it. We want to rename this, but I can't. Anchor. And it, you know, you probably wonder, well, how come you don't have, and I think I mentioned this before, how come you don't have icons, I guess, as far as to determine what extension is what? On this system here, I don't do all the busy modding work, I guess, on the gaming PC. All that has is just gameplay. You know, it doesn't matter if it's Enter 2003, Farm Sim, Wreckfest, whatever. So a lot of those extensions for like PTFs and stuff like that are not registered to that. So the fact that I don't have programs like Sandbox and whatever on that gaming PC, that's all on my workhorse, which is the streaming PC, same as the streaming PC. So this is why you see them, they're all just generic. So as far as the 3DOs don't have an icon or anything like that. And I'm perfectly fine with that because I can actually see the extension and just compare that to what I can see that has an icon, I guess, with the other one. So for me, it works. This is what I'm trying. So we got the PTF over there. Now we need to get the updated softwall inner. And okay, so this is our track edit folder. So you can see I've got that bitmap for that overhead too that I created. And this one here has 274 items, which has way more items, I guess, than our game track directory, which only has 249. That's going to give you some comparison there. So we're only keeping in here what we need to have to load it into the sim. Right? Bot being grumpy for you? Oh my goodness, I guess. Torch has made him mad. That's what I'm going with. Oh yeah, so your name come up different color on my end there. That was weird. Or is resigned to be bested by Torch, right? Yeah, your name came up different than that message. That was interesting. I had to double look there. It's like, oh whoa, did someone else show up here? Just realized I can change the color of my. Oh, so you're messing with that. Trying to throw me off there. Yeah, I was just making sure there wasn't someone new that came in. Yeah, so you're playing around with the name. Yeah, you can change the color of your name. That's an option that Twitch has had there for a sign. So what I need to get over here from this is our game track directory. What I need to get over here in our edit folder, what's wrong one? Is, now I gotta look over here, make sure I got the right stuff. Give me a second. So I need the SMI logo and SMI med dual. Okay, so they both start with SMI. That's what I want to earn on those 3DOs, and then soft wall inner. Okay. Here we've got this one. Full and the soft wall inner. These are the three updated pieces here that is in our track edit folder. I gotta bring that over to the track game directory. Copy that. Paste that over. Our game track directory. Okay, so now this is gonna ask me if I want it to replace, which I want to do. It should be 3 items. Yep, so these three items that I want to replace, because they were already previously in there, they're just been updated. I want to replace those. Now we should be good to go. So we got our updated PTF that has that opening. Let me switch this back over here to the infield to get that access to the victory lane, and using all that we described, as well as our new medallion pieces with the updated texture. So we should have everything we need here to be able to get okay. I think we're a little bit set there. Where are we at there? Man, we were like under 2 hours. That's crazy. Seems like I've gone over quite a bit of information here. I would get into a little bit more, but Torch, I'm going to leave it, like I already mentioned, I'm going to leave it up to you, I guess, as far as what you find more appropriate, I guess, as far as the approach for the infield object. And hopefully we'll be able to see that, I guess, as far as next time around. I think I've shown enough as far as the approach that I would take. That's just me, though, so I don't want to take away, I guess, as far as the way you might want to go ahead and do that. Okay. Alrighty, I think at this point here, I'm going to take a short little recess just to kind of get a little bit of a stretch, get things situated here so I can run some laps, I guess, on the track. I'm hoping, with all the adjustments that I've made since last week, that we're actually going to be able to race. That's the thing here. What I can initially do here, I guess, now I think of that, let me load up the sim, make sure it loads, and ensure that it's not going to step on the stream itself. I can do that at least. I'm doing this off screen, so see what happens here. If I can get this into testing mode. Okay. Checking the status of stream. So far, so in testing mode seems fine. Y'all may be able to hear that, I think. Probably. Okay, yeah, so that's loading up in testing mode. That's a good sign. I'm gonna go ahead and load up a race session here to see. I'm gonna monitor, I guess, as far as the integrity of the stream itself to make sure it doesn't get angry. Oops. Back, and we're gonna go into single race. I'm just doing some initial tests on here off screen real quick before I go on break for a short little while. Everything seems to be okie dokie smoky. Okay. Yeah, cars are loading in, all that good stuff. Nice. Alright, I'm gonna get out of this one. Yeah, I'm gonna initially do this one once I come back here and get everything set up here, and we're gonna do a testing session that we can observe how that infield access does work and all that. So yeah, I don't know if did y'all remember, I guess, as far as what I was trying to tell you, what you're supposed to remind me. I'm gonna go ahead and load this up here real quick and see if this does work here. I'm gonna switch this over to the BRB screen once I get this loaded up here, and hopefully this will work like I'm hoping it does. And y'all can have some fun with that. Get some interaction in the chat there. So you can use emotes, you can type things into this. What it is called, it's called Stream Fighters, and what it allows it to do is it puts caricatures on the screen that you can just that kind of bounce around as far as fight each other while it's in a static screen there. And you can put emotes in the chat or just type in chat. You can play the mini chat games, do whatever you want to do in chat, and it triggers, I guess, these to load. So let's see if this works here. Inch dividers. Alright, so we're going to put this in... Oh, I want a smaller window. It needs a smaller window. Okay, is that as small as I can go? Windowed, yes. Play. Okay. Give this a second to load. Yep. Alright, let's put this off screen here for a second. Yeah, it's really nothing sensitive there. It's cool. Just want to make sure it's on my channel. I should be able to start the game. So it is loading. There we go. Yeah, so this won't show up on the screen until actually go to the BRB screen, but I just want to load it up here first real quick. Is it loaded? Here, type something. I think it's loaded. A second here. Let me switch it over here real quick. Give me a second. I want to make sure that this is a black screen. I don't know if that's right. I'm hoping it works. Alright, it is working. Cool. Yeah, I just had to put an emote. So like I said, you can put an emote, you can play the mini chat games, you can talk amongst yourself, do whatever you want to do. I guess as far as like that, this should work once I go to the BRB screen. So, yeah. I'll be going to the BRB screen. I will see you all in just a minute or two. Alrighty then, I guess nobody else really wanted to play that there, but that was giving an example, I guess, as far as what I got for BRB screens. Gives you a little chance, I guess, as far as anything that you type in the chat, emotes, you know, playing the mini chat games or whatever, it allows those little avatars, I guess, to fight each other on the screen there. So, yeah. I guess everybody else kind of went on break too. Alright, we'll be back. Everybody else is got themselves some snacks or whatever you want to do. There's Torch coming back there. So yeah. Anything that is inputted into the chat there, I guess, as far as it does activate, I guess, as far as the little avatars on the screen there for that and that BRB screen. That's something new that I guess I've applied there. Got to give some just to kind of liven it up there, I guess, as far as on the BRB screen, at least anyway. You're making dinner? What are we having for dinner? I don't even know what the heck I'm having for dinner. It might have to be a KFC night. To tell you the truth, it might just have to be. Alright, we're just closing in on the 2-hour mark there too. Been a relatively quiet stream, I guess, so far. Appreciate everybody that is lurking. Lurkers are always very much appreciated. Cheeseburgers and fries. Alright. Sounds good. Yeah, like I said, it might end up being a KFC night for me. Okay, so let's switch this over. Like I was saying prior to that little bit of intermission there, I'm going to initially start this in testing mode. Oh, your own recipe. So, you care to elaborate? Oh, can't risk it yet. Those special herbs and spices, I guess, in the burgers. Are you using like American fries, what we call American fries, you know, just actual potatoes and like cut into wedges, or is it actually just like shoestrings? Now I'm getting really trying to give myself ideas as far as for dinner as well, I suppose. Alright, let's sounds pretty good though. Well, many ingredients with sauteed onions. Ooh. So many ingredients. You got your own herbs and spices. You got your own special blend of herbs and spices. Oh, crinkle fries, nice. Are you using actual potatoes, or are they like? I want to say like. I hate to use the word processed, but I guess that's kind of what I think of. I guess as far as so like the store-bought crinkle cut fries. Toss the sink at it. Okay. Yeah. So are your crinkle fries, like I said, they store-bought, or are they actually potatoes cut into crinkle cut? Store-bought fries. Nice. I like the seasoned fries, I guess you could say like that. I guess they do make them in crinkle cut as well. But they're the seasoned fries, you know, kind of the ones like you get at Rally's, Checkers, and those places of the like. They got those seasoned fries, so they're not like traditional French fries like you get at McDonald's or Burger King. They have that special batter on them. Good stuff. All right, I'm gonna switch this over. So this should be loading up. Whoops, wrong one. Gotta use the right screen. There we go. So we got the. Oh, I know I forgot to take off. I gotta take this off. Let's turn that off. for now. Sure. That is... There we go. I really need to get myself a stream deck or something so I can turn on these functions on and off a little bit quicker. But I guess that's just wishful thinking. Yeah, Arby's curly cheddar fries. Yeah, see, so yeah, those are the curly type. But yeah, it's those something similar to those. They don't necessarily have to be curly. I just like those seasoned. You know, they got that batter with the seasoned batter on it. It's good stuff. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, so as I said, we're in testing mode for Texas. I did have this loaded up, I guess, off screen here, but here we go. We're gonna test it out this way first. And I think what I will do is I'm gonna turn off ambient music here for the time being, so we can get all the sounds that is in our tune up. Alright, hopefully those sounds are coming over. This shows and good on my end here. Arby's, ooh, that even sounds good too. So I was thinking like initially KFC, but Arby's doesn't sound too bad. They've been having some pretty good deals. So what I'm gonna do, let's go this way. So we're in testing mode. So what we've done to the PTF, I guess while I'm at it too, I'm gonna check and look at how these look, aliens look as far as in the sim. Do that first, and then we'll work our way over to infield there to see how that's applied. This looks really good. That turned out fantabulous. That is fantabulous. You would never be able to guess that that's a 3D model piece. Oh my damn. The way it blends in, you know, it's like, it almost looks like what you did if you were to look at there, that top piece, as far as the piece that's inset, as you mentioned there, Torch, that's the only piece that's modeled. That's how well that whole piece in itself, as far as just meshes so well with that geometric wall. This is you know what I've been trying to show, I guess, as far as the capabilities that you have with such an old simulation, as far as to be able to marry the geometric and the 3D model pieces together and get it, you know, to blend so well that you can't tell where the model starts and where the geometric starts. Where the model starts and where the geometric is, or vice versa. Crazy. All the way through this, as I look at this even closer, it's just like, yeah, the fact that it's got that inset now, it even makes it that much. Even that little bit of a lip that you have on that getting edge, you know, as far as looking from that top piece there, it's got that little bit of a rise to it, so it doesn't go right into the curve. It's got that little bit of uplift there. That just adds even. And it looks like you have accentuated, I could be wrong, on that weld that's on the top of the safer there. So adding all of those just minor details is both the texture and the actual model. It's like, this is part 2. Oh, so yep. So the fact that they stay uniform, that's probably another good point, I guess, to make at this point. Not so far with what we got applied just to do here, just on this part of the main stretch, front stretch here, is this should follow suit for anywhere else that you apply it through. There should be nice and uniform. Not going to have any derivations, I guess, of that in other areas. Now, it may come to be, you know, so this is going back to the whole idea of how you would apply shading, as far as shadows and things like that. That might present a different story depending on areas of the track that you apply it to, like the backstretch or things like that. You would have to everything else just so stinking nice. You can't tell the difference unless you were like to go. We showed this last week as far as the fact that this looks open but you can't get through there. That's kind of what I consider to be like a booby trap. It doesn't give any drivers any ideas, because as far as trying to gain an advantage at, you know, the exploit, I guess, that might have give them an advantage. Yeah, now we're going to go in here, so we can't get through that one. Already concluded, but as of last week, notice that we could not have the axis in there because we didn't have that open on the left. Now that we got this open on the left, we have access to it. And just confirm. Now we can drive through this. This model itself does not have any collidable property. It can be argued, I guess, as far as, you know, if you wanted to add W sections, that, you know, something to give it a collidable property. Maybe move the X section up so that you can't drive through the building like this, but have access to it. This is the first step. First thing. So if you want to be able to drive into victory lane, you have that option. Now, what it should do, yep, see, we can't drive that way, and that's probably, so either this direction. That segment is not open on the left, so that kind of shows you how this works. So by design, you're only going to have access to what segments that we open here. They're primarily right around. Holy crap, that's the third one! Forge is just stealing all the thunder off the jackpots there. 3 big ones. That's 3,000 units of fluid. A relatively short period of time, might add. So the other thing, it should stop us access for this red spot. Right there. Okay, so yep, that was what I noticed there. So there was that red area that was in the infield area there. That's what I wanted to, I took a mental note of that. So yeah, so by design, this is not allowing you access beyond that point. So you're only going to have access to that. So there may not necessarily need any other modifications to, other than maybe to the X section. You can put that in so that you can't go quite this far. So stop us. Oh, I guess it does not stop us. So this is what I was talking about, having all this access like this. May not want this. May not want this. May want to put some booby traps over here so that this is not. So if anybody were to figure this out, and they can get behind this victory lane, use other objects that get applied in here as gain access. This is all open here. Now, part of what's going on here, the fact that the innermost X section is closer to this direction here, it may present itself against the knot. I'm going to try and do a lap around this thing. I'm going to see if it actually does. There are some loosely embedded booby traps or some bumps in here. But the fact that we have all this access here, this is what I was talking about as far as, like, you know, you can find the holes in the actual. Okay, so there's the section there. There's a booby trap. Yeah, so just to kind of confirm, I guess, when you open a segment, it's open all the way through that segment. The X section does not give you any. So what I'm running to right there is the X section, because that's not open on the left, like those other. This should be locked down right
on the other side of the seam of the hood. Seams of the hood right there above the grill.
See, that's an X section.
Seal all that up. Start getting all that sealed up.
That's either an X section or we'll look at that. I don't 100%. But see, that gives you an idea though, as far as that not being open on the left. It's not going to give you access to that. That's why it's bouncing off that barrier. This is what the difference is between on the left segment. Testing it. It does give me access here beyond that segment, but I mean back. Yeah, so that's where the tail of the segment. That's the tail of the segment in this other segment. That might be good enough, I guess, as far as to read. But the fact that all the rest of there's a little bit of magenta bleed on that when you get close. Not that terrible, but there's a little bit of magenta bleed on there. Which
the hell happened now?
But I'm gonna see if I can do a lap.
Might be blowing up.
I'm gonna reset my car, and I'm gonna see if I can actually do a lap here, and I'll actually log a lap. See what goes. Turn to pit. We already know we can't get through that spot. Getting through this one. We kind of already know how the track drives, so it's might get into an actual one into it. Do another quick race. Well, it does let me give me access here. It's nice and clean. Okay, so as long as I stay, yep. See, that's what I wanted to check. See that red spot that I was mentioning in there. As long as I know as a driver that I can stay left of that red spot, go back here. There's a red spot kind of in line with that score tower. Woo, here we go. That's a nice booby trap right there. Yep, so things like this would definitely, sure, I guess as far as drivers to be able to get an advantage on. Pretty cool. That's the other thing I wanted to try to see if there was any exploits, you know, as far as to be able to gain an advantage by doing a lap within the infield. Alright, let's go. So there are some built-in booby traps there, which is kind of nice. This is what I want to test out. Just to see. So it does give me accident, and it's nice and clean too, regardless of. Does have the collidable property on that. That's expected. That's the W section. We have that split there. Already shown. It does give us access to the victory lane. Alright, so what I was referring to, so if I stay in line with this here as a driver, I know, boom, that doesn't let me, but if I stay to the left of that, I stay clear of it on this side, I know it'll let me. These are the types of exploits that drivers will look for in the track. Let's see if I stay, let's see what this does. Let's see if it'll let me do a lap here. Kind of give you an example of what I was talking about earlier, just as far as being able to do a lap in here. And you can kind of, it's a little bit of a, yep, so I'm running into that X section. It's the invisible boundary there. That's definitely telling them, it's like, okay, I can't go too close. So if I stay to the left of the victory lane, that, see, it's let me right around here, but I want to see if it does actually log a lap. If it doesn't log a lap, then that's really not a problem then. You can see where that invisible barrier is, I guess, as far as will be a combination of the X section and the end of that segment as far as on the left. See, I'm hitting that there. That's good. Kind of what you want. It's going to remove any exploitation that there would be. Okay. That one. Yeah.
40.
See, it's logging lap times. Yeah. So, if anyone was really good at practicing this, they could actually log a lap during qualifying. This is what I was mentioning, so I'm gonna go around here again, so it give me a 40-second lap. So if one was to practice instead of on the track here, practice in the infield here, they could definitely try and better lap time in the infield, which is obviously going to be a smaller radius. It's going to be a lot tougher. Don't get me wrong, you know, because I just spun out there, as you can see. Not as much grip and so on, but this is what drivers will try to do. Give me another lap time.
52.
See, it's giving me, so it is logging laps.
5.
Because I'm actually making a, you know, one complete lap, I guess, as far as around here. Because yeah, the overall control, even though it's not on the racing surface, right? It's still, as far as the game is concerned, I'm doing laps. Making a full, you know, as far as going in the direction of the track, which in this case is counterclockwise. As long as I'm doing that, it's going to give me lap time. It does take some practice, but get good at it, you can really kind of cheat how well of a lap time you can get was actually driving the track, because it is a smaller radius than the actual track.
45.2.
See, I just bettered my time from the 52. See, if I keep at this smaller and smaller radius here, I can actually I can cheat that open system that the sim has. And I'm only putting this out here just as far as to let anybody know that when you've got a track that has an open access to the infield, this is essentially what you would have. It's an exploit that drivers will try to use in the qualifying session of the races.
40.87.
See, I bettered my time there again. Let's see if I can get it better than that. See, it takes some practice. Don't get me wrong, but some guys get really good at practicing. You can really now the fact that the 40-second laps that I've been doing there is obviously way slower than you could actually on the track. It's like, why would you even bother? But trust me, you do it. If I take a smaller approach, I guess, as far as take a smaller radius here, don't go quite so wide. See if there's any other traps up there. As long as I'm making a full rotation. Crap. See, oh, you can get out of shape for sure, but still, it'll log a lap time.
$57.
See, now I'm back to that, because I took it slower.
1.
I spun out, whatever. Flapping my gums there. Let's see if I can take a smaller radius. Ow, it's super slippery in here though. Yeah, so yeah, it might be okay, I guess, as far as all that goes, but some guys, I'm gonna tell you, some drivers they'll try to exploit this as far as to just make use, I guess, of being able to make a lap here. I mean, I'm spinning out quite a bit, but that doesn't mean I'm any good at this. But the fact that this is all open like this and it does actually log lap times, it is very possible for drivers to exploit that. That's the only point where I'm trying to show this.
53.52.
Yeah. So with practice here, I could probably get it to where it's better than lap time that would be actually on the track. See, it you know, for some it might be good enough, I guess, as far as it's slippery. It's hard to even maintain a halfway decent lap to try and do that, but it will log lap times. No other booby traps, I guess, as far as all this open area that I've got here. So, me, it would make sense, I guess, as far as to add additional X section to the segments here, just to add, even if it is kind of random here, just so that you know, and as you get garage areas in there, if you want access to that, you can do that, but to add just random X sections to there, or visible walls, I guess, to kind of move that potential exploit. They will use it. Trust me, they will use it. I've seen it done. I think it's even true to this day. I'm gonna see how much. Seems like there's a big gap there. I'm gonna look at this from the. So I'm driving just on that infield object. And this area here, that's the concrete that I'm driving up to, that's geometric. Yeah, there's really not much difference there. So even with that gap that's in there that we can see between the infield, there's really no difference in how much flipping there is into the. Looks like a transition, but that gap is different. Get it from. Yeah, so from here, the way that texture doesn't look like it 100% lines up. It's kind of a trick of the eye, I guess. Once you get more things populated up in here, it probably won't be it. Relatively a nice transition between that infield plane and the geometric. This is geometric right here. As far as I can remember. I know the wall itself, I think, is 3D. This part here, I think, and Torch, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. As far as I can remember, this part here, geometric. So yeah, just the way the geometric and the 3D model pieces, as far as how the car transitions, that it's. I almost want to say, now that I have said that, there's no shadow. Notice there's no shadow from the car, so I want to say this is probably all modeled. Now, that being said, just entertain. Pause it. Oh, I print screen. Not bad. I got a shit screenshot. So the one way I can tell between model pieces and geometric is shadow. There's the shadow. See that that's all modeled. So again, just that transition between the model piece and the geometric piece, practically flawless. Alright, let's look at that from. So you can see, this is how I can tell the fact that there's a shadow. This is geometric, this is modeled. That's one way I can tell, I guess, as far as, but that transition between all of that is nice and, you know, you can definitely see that separation between the infield piece and area, that's for sure. But as we've already discussed, or whatever, that'll probably more than likely be modified as far as somewhere down the road. As far as that infield that we've been talking about that needs to get redone. As far as between texture. Yeah, so yeah, that transition for that is pretty nice. You would never know that this was geometric and this was the way that. The only way you can tell, like I said, is that shadow. Pretty cool. I just wonder now. Got this something else I want. Back into the victory lane here. Yeah, so we definitely did, oops, that segment. You can really see where the edge of that segment is here, too. Let me back this up here again. Burped here a little bit. I'm monitoring this as far as the condition of that. It seems to be pretty decent so far, I guess, as far as the adjustments. You can see where the edge of that segment is, right? So that's not letting me turn left. Still, I get slowly going across this here. See, there's where the open segment is, right there. This open segment starts, and yeah, when it's not open end. I want to look at the angles that are. Looks like I guess. So the texturing for the victory lane obviously still needs. You get the idea here. Drive it on up here. See how this looks from. Okay, so whether or not, what I was going to look at, I was wanting to see here as far as how much lift there is. So you can definitely see there's some lift. Or lack thereof, I guess, in the object. You can see underneath the tires there. So there's obviously adjustment that'll need to be effective. Oh, that's raised there. From this angle, I can't even tell. The fact that it's lacking the shadow, that's about the only clue. That is our only. So probably another thing I would put into consideration is possibly put a better camera angle like that. So the fact that this is spectator, whether or not it's a fixed view or not, that's All of these are moving cameras, so the fact that they do adjust as far as the position of the vehicle, not one that's really planted, I guess, on the. That's something that can be as far as putting a fixed point, I guess. Screenshots. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. So, with exception to the way it's textured, obviously it's outdated, and the lack thereof, I guess, as far as the shadow vehicle there, that could potentially be adjusted, as far as by the height of that actual infield piece, for example, that we can't allow that car shadow, I guess, to show. And there is a tolerance, if you will, I guess, as far as how much, and I forget what the actual numbers are. I know Racer James 76 knows like the back of his hand. He's done plenty of things, I guess, as far as to determine how much of a relief you need to have of the object that is a ground model, be it in the form of a decal or even an infield object in this case, to allow that car shadow that is produced, I guess, by default, I guess, by the sim, to be able to have that show that has that natural and organic look, I guess, as far as so it doesn't look bad. Yeah, so that's just something else to take in consideration, maybe with the recreation or the adjustment made to the infield object, so that you do have essentially the car shadow showing. But I think that's enough of showing off testing mode. We're going to check this out in race mode. So let's get. We're able to look at just as far as where there might be some exploits available, I guess, as far as in the infield. As far as it does log lap times when you do go around in that same direction, the actual racing surface. So things to take into consideration, I guess, as far as possible exploits. Alright, let's back this up here into race mode. We're just going to do some racing on this bad boy. Relatively quiet, for the most part. With exception, I guess, to Torch is kind of tearing up the slots. There are 3. Though I think all the jackpots that you've gotten, that's all been that maximum. That's unheard of. What kind of hack are you running there, Torch? I think inquiring minds would like to know. That's for sure. Let's load this up into single race. Let's do that. So we're gonna run a 17 lap event. 42 vehicles in all, include ourselves, 41 opponents. And when we tried to do this last week, like I was saying, as far as it did, yep, so it seems to be fine. So hopefully it stays that way throughout the duration of this. So I am not going to qual. I'm going to stay at the back of the field, just to kind of get a sense of where we're at now with everything. So we got the victory lane in there now. We've added that object, as well as those medallions. So we want to see how everything is behaving so far with 4 vehicles, I guess, populated, starting from the back, which is going to allow going to really put some strain, I guess, as far as the graphics, especially using this more detailed mod than is the default by Papyrus here. It's a modified and more detailed version of that 2003 car model that Papyrus did provide with the sim. Done by Splash and Go, which I should probably remind is kind of now defunct now. Cosmin and his group have kind of closed shop, I guess, as far as they've done really well, I guess, as far as on mods like this one, the 98, the 2003, the 98 mod. We've shown that one, and also the Monster Energy 19, the Manx 19 is most near 2003 community call it. Still very solid mods. I'm starting to see, though, too, I guess, as far as the templates being created for even like the Manx 19, I guess, as far as to accommodate the new body that they're producing for NASCAR, as far as the Gen 7, the next gen. And it's been going on for quite some time. But it just makes me cringe, I guess, as far as, when these templates that are made to fit, I guess, a model that doesn't bit, I guess, as far as, you know, to make them look like something else. You know, so to add these features that the new bodies have, you know, as far as the way the rims are, you know, the actual wheels are a different style. It's a 1 lug opposed to a 5 lug and things like that. It's just, they got the diffuser that's on the back side, back underside of it, things like that. I'm seeing the templates. I'm starting to see the templates around the Inter 2003 community to use that Manx 19, for example, I guess, as far as to apply that new body style. And it's, some of them are tasteful, some of them are like, I'll just keep my opinions to myself. And hopefully there is one in development. The fact that it does take quite a bit. Cosmin can probably tell you, I guess, as far as any of those folks, I guess, from Splash and Go can pretty much tell you, it takes a while, I guess, to start to finish as far as to develop mod. Be nice and optimize and be... Cosmin and his group's approach has always taken the approach to make it a better template, a better canvas to be able to paint onto, without having areas that warp, as we've come to understand, I guess, as far as what the way some of the older mods, and even the original mod for that matter, design. In fact, it has those areas like on the nose that warp and things like that. This has been the premise to build a better mod that was not only more aesthetically appealing all throughout, to include the damaged models and so on, but also a better canvas to be able to paint onto painting template. Alright, I'm just getting myself psyched up here. Drink if you got them there, folks. We might have lost some people. Hopefully we can get giving people some time back, I guess, to... What was the secret there, anyway? I was talking about a bunch of stuff there. I forgot. What was the secret? Yeah, so I guess what I'll do here initially, I'll get in here on the practice session here just to kind of go with the flow of the traffic here. I will not qualify, like I said there. I want to start from the back.
Clear to the wall.
I can really strain the graphics and load all that cars that are ahead of me. I'm going to go to a different view here, that's for sure. Alright, let's get some practice here.
Stay on the apron until we get over there off 2.
Oh, bot wind secret. Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, so as far as your... Yeah, what kind of hack are you running there? That's what it's... I did hear some talk of...
Outside, clear high.
I think it was at Vegas. I don't remember if they ran Vegas recently. I haven't been keeping up with NASCAR, I'll be perfectly honest. But I think there was some talk...
One outside at your door. Outside.
You know, within the NASCAR racing community there, they were talking about Vegas potentially adding that PJ1 compound to Vegas. Now, the fact that Atlanta is getting repaved, I'm not 100% sure if that's completed yet, but I know I did all the footage, I guess, as far as the fact that Atlanta, they found it necessary to have to repave that, so that was already underway. It's been underway for a couple months now. Whether or not it is finished, I haven't been paying attention to that, but I did hear that PJ1 compound being talked about, I guess, as far as being used at tracks like Vegas, which is another SMI track, as well as Atlanta. So Texas, Atlanta, and Vegas are all SMI tracks, and the fact that they seem to be the ones using this, what is called this PJ1, which is what I just went through. There's 1 and 2 there. At least that's the replication of it here in Inter 2003 anyway. Yeah, these guys seem to be racing pretty decent here. I was trying to race against them here in practice here, and it's kind of nice. What the hell was up with that car? Kind of stopping there in the middle of the track. At least he was out of the way. At least he was out of the way. Yeah, so that's that PJ1 that was being demonstrated or replicated here in Inter 2003. So the visual aspect there is definitely pretty different from what we've seen. I think it blends in well. It's definitely, you can tell the difference between that and just the rubber that's laid down. Definitely distinctive. Well, the fact that this doesn't, but it has the groove that's going over it too, right? So the fact that you've got that natural groove that the simulation creates, based on where that best line is, for example.
Clear low.
Kind of blended in with that area that has been designed from the geometric level and sandbox. Kind of blends in really nice. This track is so much fun to race on now. It does take it's a little bit of a learning curve, especially to understand that you cannot run as fast on this end of the track as you can in 3 and 4. And that's, that's to be expected as far as that's what the drivers in reality deal with. The way I've got this set up here, it definitely bottoms out in this end here. Try to get all that I can out of this corner in comparison to this end here, which has a lot less banking.
1, 3, 7.
It's very noticeable because like I said, I'm going better part of 180 miles on that one here, and I'm 20 miles an hour slower on this end. In order to keep it, I want to say a straight line, but to keep from pushing to the wall. But obviously, the law of physics say centrifugal force even. The more banking that you have, the harder it's going to be for the car to want to climb to the outside edge of the corner. The fact that this is a lot less banking here definitely wants to push if you try to go the same amount of speed. That's just the law of physics. That's science. So the fact that the track has been built basically to LiDAR specifications, real-world information, the simulation is translating that into how the track behaves. We haven't even, exaggerated or over-exaggerated even as far as the way the I&I grips are to be able to get this dynamic. The fact that you naturally have to slow down because of the lack of banking on one end in comparison to the other, based on all that real-world information that we have with the LiDAR, it just holds true that the LiDAR doesn't lie. As far as if you're going to get that proper amount of behavior of a track, naturally, without having to exaggerate anything in the I&I. I'm just going to let this practice session run out.
One outside at your door.
I want to get into a pack of cars I start to race against this of you guys.
They're high.
I'm still bottoming out pretty bad. Oh, no, I'm starting to push.
30.4. 4. 2.
Yeah, so this is a 2003 car set. So we got Rusty Wallace,
Clear low.
Tony Stewart, who's number 20, Home Depot.
1 inside.
Oh, not
Still
quite.
there. Clear.
I saw that. Out of corner of my eye.
1 inside.
Yeah, I'm kind of beating. I'm killing him, I guess, even in this practice session. Got a 29-second lap.
Clear. Job day 2, bud.
Alright.
Alright, I'm out of here.
Practice is over.
Job day 2, bud. Alright, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm just in practice session right here.
Pace car! Hit the pace car! Hit the pace car! What for?
In actuality, I do wish we could hit the pace car. I mean, we can, but it's non-collidable, so. And I've explained that before as far as why Papyrus did take that approach. Yeah, see, there, accident avoidance right there. Tony Stewart definitely slowed up. Saw that I slowed up. But that transition, coming into the pits there is really nice.
Alright, I'm out of here.
It's nice and smooth. I mean, you still have to, be up on the wheel, I guess, as far as to make sure you can't come in too hot. I mean, that's to be expected. But the fact that that transition, there's no hop, as far as that transition that naturally exists, I guess, as far as between the apron and that.
Drivers, to your cars.
It's just really nice, both on the exit and the entrance there. Alright, so like I said, I'm not going to qual. I'm going to go right to... going to be starting from the back of the pack. Again, just to put a lot of strain on the graphics to get all these things to load up there. So I'm going to give it a second here. Let to populate. And probably good mention here too that the starting grid, as far as the full pace lap, has not been set. So it still needs to be adjusted. Obviously, it just needs to be shifted more up on the lane and not in pit stalls. But it works, or I guess for our purposes for now. Yeah, mostly just probably the D lats will have to be shifted. D longs is probably good, you know, as far as where the pace car is and all that. It's just over, I guess, on the road a little bit. And that might safeguard too, I guess, as far as potentially, because when you're on pit road like this, there is the option, the possibility, you know, as far as the game is concerned, that drivers, especially maybe towards the tail end, and we've made sure, I guess, as far as that the majority of the field is ahead of that lead segment in these points, I guess, before too. You know, it's a little bit tougher to do, I guess, as far as on short tracks for sure. But whenever you can make the whole field, I guess, as far as ahead of that lead segment, the better scoring that you're going to get applied to the track, because you won't have anybody that's going to be on the end or coming up to that lead segment on the wrong side of the lead segment, if you will, and get potentially and erroneously black flagged or improper scoring as far as the, you know, position wise. So that's just things to take in consideration as far as that goes. But definitely getting these cars on the inside line, out of the pit stall zone, especially on an initial start here, even if it is on the pace lap, it's going to remove them potentially getting relentlessly charged, I guess, with a pit stop, you know, as far as, you know, improper scoring and timing. So just things, and, you know, just some things to take in consideration as far as to ahead of the lead segment and have your cars, I guess, on pit road and not necessarily in their stall, because the game, it's shown this, I guess, and it's sporadic. It's not 100% confirmed that that's what it does, but it will sometimes log a vehicle, especially if the position that they're starting in ends up being in their actual stall that they qual in, if you will. So the way the sim works, if you qualify in, say, the 10th position, your stall becomes stall 9 as far as the INI goes. So if your starting position ends up being in this spot, you know, I'm just, you know, just pointing it out there, say this is the 10th spot. If that vehicle is in the actual spot that is their pit stall based on their starting or qualifying position, the game reads that as you doing a pit stop. So that on the initial start, it will say unsafe pit, so an erroneous black flag, I guess, for doing that. So you definitely want to make sure that the vehicles are not. There is that potential, like I said, and that's just like a random thought there, but it is 100% guaranteed that, you know, again, just like I mentioned, as far as like if a vehicle does, even let's just use the pole position. If this is their actual stall, right? That's probably another good point, I guess, to make. If they're qualifying in this position and their stall is there, it's showing them that's in that stall as far as on the initial start. So the game is going to log that as them making a pit stop. So that might cause a potential black flag. But you can use any position for that matter in regard. So definitely behoove to make sure that this gets shifted so that's on pit road. Let's get this thing started, though. That's twice you've almost gotten that sad face. Bot's being a little stingy, I guess, at this point now. It's like, you've had enough.
Drivers,
Here we go.
start your engines!
Yeah, so even though it is offset here, at this point here, we can't 100% tell without actually looking at where these AI cars have actually qualled and whether or not. But just like I pointed out with Jimmy Johnson car, the fact that he qualified on a pole, that stall that he was in there, as far as like even halfway, that would potentially give him. Now, obviously, we don't see him having to park it, you know, on the initial start or anything like that, so it may not be a problem in this regard, but there is the potential there, so you want to make sure that your starting position for a pull pace step is, like I said, two things to take into consideration ahead of that lead segment, or at least within that lead segment on the, you know, trailing edge of that lead segment, and also out on the pit road and not in just to keep those two things. Just to remove any potential problem on initial start. So this thing is loading up pretty nice here. So we're running in the back of the field here. It's kind of hovering up higher 60s. Kind of does fluctuate down to 40s just depending. Still pretty Pretty smooth
Alright, man.
frame rates
I'll
here.
call the green there. Nice smooth shift.
No
I'll walk in
commentary or
front of
anything
you.
like that. That's
Go
good.
get him. Alright, man. Pace car's in.
Here we go.
Get ready. Grind, grind, grind. Grind, grind, grind.
I'm just gonna hang out here in the back here for the most part, just to kind of see where the frame rates. You know, we're gonna get a feel, I guess, as far as for. You know what? That medallion didn't look like it was. I'm gonna go back around here. I'm gonna take a look at those medallions. It almost looked like it was the old texture. Look at that, man. Shouldn't have been, but sure did look like it when I just went by there on that initial start. Yeah, like I said, for the most part, I'm gonna hang out here in the back just to see where the frames go. Oh my goodness, why are you slowing down so much?
Yellow that. Keep digging. Caution's gonna be out. All the way to the line. Come on. All the way to the line. 34.
Fair enough. Fair enough,
One.
caution.
8.
I wanted to get a better look at this medallion here. Looks like it's got more highlight, or it's like it's lit up. But the obviously the welds are in there, so it's got the proper texture on it. Go around me.
Okay, bud. Race is over. Can you tell me what you're doing, buddy?
I'm trying to look at these medallions. What I'm trying to do. Alright, I guess they're not really too bad. Now, what I'm comparing it to, so like the coloring of the T here, and I'm right next to, and then in comparison to that medallion, the way that shading is. So, this is what I was kind of hitting on, I guess, as far as to get it to blend in. So the fact that the welds are in there, that's definitely, we can see that. It's got that offset or that inset to that top piece of the medallion. That's all cool. But what it still needs is that, and this is all probably natural shading, for lack of a better way to put it, the fact that it still looks like really, really white in comparison to, say, the white that's in here, or even on the Texas there.
Leader's coming up.
So we might need to have, I know Torch has been trying to use that interior, or that inner soft wall texture, but it might need its own texture to be able to accommodate what's actually going on this wall. That's just something I would take into consideration, because it still looks like it, even though the welds are there in that, because it doesn't really match the white that's going on in these white areas that are on the safer. Maybe you can adjust, you know, the badging on that. I hope you can see what I'm talking about here. The fact that it just, see, it probably looks better here as far as the way the Texas is here. See how dark lettering is there in comparison to the medallion. So either the verbiage, or whatever you want to call it, I guess, as far as in the logo itself for the wall, needs to be brightened up, or the medallion needs its own texture, so you can adjust how much shading is to that different areas here, so that it blends in. This is probably going to become true, possibly, I guess, as far as where else you put that medallion. So you might have to adjust them individually. Might have to have its own texture, I guess, as far as to be able to adjust those. That's just something I think of, I guess, as far as when I see it that way. But I think, you know, the other point I want to make is you probably won't be able to do that with just that soft wall inner, or whatever it is name that you're using currently now, because otherwise that's going to adjust the way it looks on the inside, which I don't think you need to. But probably what we're battling with here is the fact that the same idea with that geometric, the geometric as in comparison to the model, how we have to adjust the texture. I think it's probably going to lead more to having these model pieces on the geometric wall that I'm just showing here. They would have to have their own texture. Otherwise, if you adjust the shading on the one you're currently using, it's going to adjust the one that's on the interior, and that's going to look weird. So in this case here, like here, if you shade that darker, it's going to make these look darker, and that's going to look weird. It's going to make that all look different. So, me, it sounded like you might almost have to use a separate texture just for those that are on the outside. Geometric walls. Keeping in mind, these are all modeled on the interior, right? Remove some of the shade from the wall. I mean, I don't know what you... Yeah, so as far as what shading that you've got in the actual advertisement, we'll have to look at that a little bit closer once we get out of this, but you might have to remove some of the shading from that itself so that it, you know, doesn't that might be a potential too. Anyway, I just want to make a point just as far as it still looks really good. You can definitely tell with the welds in there makes a big difference. The fact that it does look like it's a part of the actual safer, that in itself definitely does make a difference. And with all the other aspects to like that, especially that inset that you have, you know, making that rounded over piece as far as on top of the safer, the actual geometric safer, that makes it look like it's, you know, a separate piece. It doesn't actually give it that. You could probably do the same thing, I guess, with these too. I don't think you've done anything with these yet, as far as I know. Could be wrong. Now, probably what did happen as far as the way you've textured that now, as far as it should be just, let's look at the replay here real quick. I'm kind of just going around here, I guess. I got a black flag here, so wanted to look at, yeah, see, so the way you've textured that now, it doesn't have that SMI logo on the backside, so that's good. But I'm not 100% sure if you still got all the same amount of polys. I don't know how you did these models here in comparison. Does that have the missing, the removed polys, I guess, as far as where it goes into the wall? This looks better, I guess, as far as like not having the SMI logo on the backside. And I can see that from the texture, the way you've redone that. So, and I'm just, you know, critiquing, I guess, the best, you know, from what I can see, as far as what would need to be done and what would need to be adjusted. Matched outside walls. Yeah, so as far as the remove polys and that, I guess from that, you wouldn't be able to tell, I guess, from just looking at it from this director. But if these haven't been redone in much the same way, I guess, as far as the outside walls have, that would be consideration. That would remove, like I said, unnecessary polys. But this even looks good here. So the fact that these here, without the lack of that shading on the outside walls, as I was showing, see how this just blends in there. It's like it all matches, and that's because it's all 3D modeled. And this is just something that we've always fought with, I guess, as far as to take care of, I guess, as far as the geometric marrying itself, I guess, to model pieces. But yeah, definitely see the difference in the shading of the outside walls and the inside wall. Go down the back stretch here. Well, it may come down to just to even as I was doing all that, I was monitoring as far. So obviously, when I don't have any cars in view, I got one more frames, which is good. I'm gonna go around here. Go around the track and get back to the end of the field. I'm already out of the race, so I'm not worried about that. The whole idea with this running this event was just to see how the track is responding with everything, how these things are meshing in, like those medallions. They almost look like they kind of almost look like they're lit up. Yeah, so it makes it look kind of weird.
All right, man, pace cars in.
So they definitely need to be adjusted for sure. And it's good that we know this now, in comparison to, well, I guess I went back to green. It's better to know this now as opposed to having all these pieces already applied, I guess, throughout the track and have to redo it. So.
Pit road speed 45. Need to amend that for 2500.
Oh, I forgot I was right there.
Don't speed. Do not speed here.
45, I think it is.
2500 second gear.
2500 second gear, right about there. Yeah, it should be 45. See if it clears my black flag.
Clear to the wall. They're all clear. All clear. Go hard.
Nope, I do have to stop. Okay. Yeah,
Stay
so
on
the
the
way,
apron till we get over there,
so the fact that I went backwards on the track there, so there's two different levels to black flags. You can get one for just simply speeding, which is just a drive-through penalty, but because I went actually in the wrong direction on the track and caused the detriment, that's a whole different kind of black flag. You actually have to stop and get penalized time. So just to see if I can clear this, come back into the pits and actually make a stop. My Andretti already had a piston. Oh, I got disqualified, so it might not even clear it. It might just flat out park me.
Pit road speed 45.
Yep.
Need to amend that for 2500 second gear.
Flagged as D.
Okay, go, go, go.
Okay.
Pit road speed 45.
Yeah, it's already got me on the
Eagle
board.
man number 2500 second
Let's see
gear.
if will clear it though. It shouldn't though, because that's definitely a detriment. Yeah, even as I look at it from this distance here, you can definitely see it.
Don't
Makes them look
speed,
like
do not speed
those
here.
SMI logos
Number
are
2500
lit
second
up.
gear.
Kind of weird.
Clear to the wall. They're all clear, go hard.
Yep, it's definitely not going to clear. It's already got me on the board.
So
I'm
we
looking
get over
at
there off
the
too.
scoreboard there. It's already got me DQ'd, so because of what I did as far as go backwards and all that jazz, I won't be able to clear this unless I manually do that. And I'm not going to, but I just wanted to see. This is all normal behavior for the sim, I guess, as far as to not remove that. Because it didn't say anything, I guess, as far as speeding. And do that. But the fact that it says DQ, I guess, already in there, that's my indicator, I guess, as far as that, yeah, they're not going to score me.
Pit road speed 45.
And that's just normal
Eagle
behavior.
man number 2500 second gear.
Alright. Actually pitting me? No. Dude came out there. I think I'm too far. Saying it.
Pit road speed 45. Eagle man number 2500 second gear. Right here to the left. Okay, go, go, go.
I just love watching that animation. So. And it's still got the old Monster Energy drinks. We're gonna go ahead. Got a car. And are they done yet? Nope. So we're gonna watch the remainder of this race. Just for the heck of it. Put it on. Who's leading this thing? Jimmy, still leading the. Let's check out some race action here. We got Kent that's trying to chase him down. We've got how many laps left? 14 to 17. All right. Go to the back of the field. We got Tony. Let's put this. What's Tony running in? He's a lap down. How the heck did he get a lap down? Tail end of the field, so we can see some of the racing going on throughout the field. Oh man, he's missing like part of his door there. The roll cage, that's pretty neat. But, yeah, the way they've done the damage models on this version, 2003 car set, pretty phenomenal. Really like these paint schemes. Let's see if we got any side-by-side action here. So we're on the 27th position. Got Ricky Craven in the Tide Ride. Carl Long in the Very Nadeau in the 01. Jamie McMurray when he was a rookie in the number 42. Mexico Haviland back. Rusty Wallace in the Blue Deuce. Marilyn Marlin in the 40 Coors Light. Dodge. You all remember when the Dodges came back to the back to the front here. Because Kent's going to be able to catch, what we got? Gordon's in, he's in the top 5. Got Junebug right behind him. Look at him, look how tight they're racing. Junebug's right on his tail. Sniffing him down. Template for the medallions? Okay. You saved the template for the medallions? That's but I guess the thing that's what I mentioned too. I think you almost might need keep those separate. Unless there's some way you can balance out, I guess, as far as the way the interior walls and the exterior outer walls, I guess, kind of are. Slap, okay. That's been pretty good racing there as far as like Junior was right on his tail there. I'm gonna check. Let me stop this here. I'm gonna put it back to lap. Let's put it on. I want to see this run. I mean, I haven't seen how. There's plenty of fine tweaks that we've done to this, that has been done to this track to this point, I guess, to get them to race nice and clean, nice and smooth, without any, especially on those initial starts. They do get kind of spread out and kind of go single line, single file, and for some, that's kind of boring. So, but I think there's plenty of adjustability in the I&I, if you did want to make them be a little bit more crazy. And again, it all comes down to that exaggeration. I don't feel we've got, at this point, there's not so much exaggeration in the I&I to get them to race, erratically, as far as to race, so close together and cause more cautions and that. They do race close together, though. That's really nice. We don't want them to be so far apart. But they do, they do tend to, just, we've watched this several times, I guess, as far as the, they do tend to race more single file, once they get laps in, I guess, as far as on a start, or initial start or restart. And if that's what happens in actuality, I mean, there's that. I can see how some people would probably find that kind of boring. Yeah, so the way they pit there, so there's a lack of how they slide in. They do tend to still slide a little bit sideways, but it's not too extreme. That's something else I'd take into consideration on how the offsets, I guess, as far as the pit stall positions and the LP, is designed. It's kind of a balance between that, as far as how close you put that LP and where that stall position is, and the offsets as far as how they navigate to their pit stall. You don't necessarily want them to stop in the middle of pit road and slide sideways, I guess, into that. So that's yeah. So the fact that there's very limited amount of that they slide sideways, that's pretty alrighty, folks. I don't know about you, but that's pretty much all I've had to go over here, I guess, as far as that. That's it's very minimal, as far as very limited, but there's still some pretty solid work that would still need to be done to track. I guess he gets forward. Torch has definitely got some work cut out, I guess, as far as to adjust the way the medallions present themselves, for example, as well as that infield object. So whether or not it does get taken the approach of, let me switch this over here. If it does take the approach of reconstructing that entire infield object in whatever way you decide to, I still feel, regardless of that, I'm going to still reiterate this, the texture that is used for that still needs to be adjusted, especially if it's going to be based on that that original satellite image. And I don't think it would be a good idea to find something else necessarily, I guess, as far as to get that. I mean, if it comes down to that, it comes down to that. Because I mean, but what I do feel still too strongly is that we can condense as far as what is being used, I guess, to texture that infield object. You don't need something. So even if you were to downsize it from a 4096, you don't really need to have all of that. You can crunch that down. That's what I was trying to show earlier. That's definitely somewhat the approach I would take. It'd be interesting to see, I guess, as far as what approach you do take to that torch. So I'll leave that up to you, I guess, as far as what. Let's turn. Alright. Alright, I appreciate everybody just coming on by, hanging out, I guess, as far as for what is Spline Design Studios Saturday. Probably one of the other things I didn't check out here. Yeah, I want to look at. I did kind of show that subtleness of the specular map that does exist for that. Actually, I'm gonna go back in here real quick now that I say this. I want to check some things. I didn't really get a really good look at that, so I want to look at this quick. Testing. Yeah, so it's a very subtle reflection that is on that. I figure even while I'm in testing here, I can check out that population switch that we do have onto this model. Once again, just to make sure. Just to ensure. Pretty confident it's all there, but just to kind of show it even here on stream, I guess, as far as one of the other things that we got that reflection on there. It's very subtle, very, very subtle. But as I move through this here, you can kind of see that. Kind of move the sun glare there, I guess, but so as I move across there, you can see there's that little bit of shimmer of reflection on the windows. That's a little bit of sun glare, but it's very subtle. So if we wanted to make that more definitive, you know, you can actually, you know, adjust that texture, for example, to add more to the white side on that mask for that. So that's definitely also the other thing I want to check. So if we depress the O key, you can see that goes away. So that's 2 presses of the O key, you get it to go away, and that's the way we've got it designed. So it's either so what we've skipped over is the sum. So if we turn it back on, that's 1 press. That's a press. So that's the sum. So it still shows during sum. And when we press it again, it goes away. That's the way we've got it scripted. That's the way it's designed to go away when we press the O key. In this case, twice. So 1, 2, goes away. That's just kind of show the way that's scripted. We've skipped over using it on. So we still have it showing during sum and all, but definitely on the very first step of that O key, it goes away. So that's doing it what it's supposed to. What I do notice, even with that being said, is the grandstands still remain. So there's no population switch on the billboards. Let's kind of look around this, I guess, as we stay here. Just to kind of get an idea. So there's no population switch in the grandstands or the billboards. Okay. So whether that is by design, their torch. See all the billboards, yeah, and this is with the depress of the O key. I guess all the way through you can see the victory lane is not here. Yeah, you can see what is still remaining is as far as on that, you know, as far as population. So as far as the population switch is concerned, at this stage, this is what we have still showing. This is supposed to be, you know, if we do have it set to none, where there's nothing showing, this would be this level. So the fact that we still have this there, like I said, whether that is by design that you've given on that torch, that's all up to you. But I'm just taking observation, I guess, as far as what does still remain, I guess, as far as by having in this one. So if I bring everything back, you can see what does come back, which is the score tower, that victory lane, and also the big hoss. Yeah, so all the 3 objects that I've done, I've got that population switch, I guess, as far as. Okay. Oh, they were permanent objects, and that's fair. You know, that's what I'm saying. It's all up to, you know, taking those types of things into consideration because they're permanent objects. But the other thing you want to take into consideration, if it's a distraction for not even just yourself, but also potential, you know, other potential drivers, to be able to turn these different elements off, that's something else to take into consideration. You don't really look at it from the standpoint if it's a permanent thing. Now, I know I've mentioned that before with like geometric walls. You definitely don't want those shut off. You definitely don't want those shut off, right? So that's definitely something you can take into consideration when I say that. You know, so there are certain things that you want to remain regardless of the population level. And anything that's otherwise considered geometric, like walls and things like that, you definitely, you know, want to keep that in mind. And that's what I think of too, I guess, as far as when you've done these inner walls. So even with that being said, these pit walls, for example, are you know, permanent structures, right? So you don't want that to go away. So again, all this is modeled on the interior. So if we push the O key, those still remain. So that makes sense for that to happen. As far as like structures like the grandstands and the billboards, that's still debatable, because as far as whether or not they need to remain. I think anything that's otherwise geometric, even though it is modeled and it has the option of being able to put that on there, should definitely be considered a permanent structure. So I guess that's just something I think of as far as like, so the fact that the fences turn off, I do notice. That holds in line, I guess, as far as what I think about as far as like when I say what I just said. So the fact that you've got the fencing does shut off on the infield, but yet the geometric wall still remains. I think it's still really a nice balance, I guess, as far as like, these are things you probably took into consideration. Do I want this to still show on the lowest setting of the population switch or not? I think as we add more items to the track, especially the infield and such like that, it may present itself to where you might find it necessary to have the option to be able to turn such elements like the grandstand and the billboards off as you add more items. So that gives the end user of it, regardless of yourself or anybody else that would tend to drive on it, has that option to be able to turn things off to kind of gain a little bit more frame rate if they are tending to lose something, if they have an older system that can't handle it as much. You know, because I think that's probably another fair point. As much as we try to kind of make it balanced in the way the track is built, be able to run on any type of system, regardless of how much of a potato it might be or how much more advanced it might be, you want to still be able to have those options for people that are built into the sim to be able to turn items on and off. And I think that's going to be helpful. And it's just things to take into consideration. I think so far the way you've got it, I'm not at all opposed to it, but I think for somebody else, and again taking into consideration adding additional items to the track moving forward, that might present itself, I guess, to have to say, oh, okay, maybe we better have an option, I guess, to be able to turn that off. Again, that's just something some of the things I think about when I go through this. I've been through this enough times to know sometimes it does lead to that. So yeah, probably some fair points. So I just wanted to show, I guess, the way the population switch and all that is working on those, and what is staying on and what isn't. And I think that was good thing to kind of go over this too, because I think at this point it's pretty well balanced. I did okay. So even with this off here, this is interesting. So I noticed you've got the interior wall and the fencing does go away, but you still leave the safer. That's interesting. So you're still leaving some type of visual wall there, but it's still allowing, I guess, this to go away. That's an interesting approach. I don't know if you've done it on purpose, but it's like that's pretty interesting, I guess, as far as, so at least you're leaving something visual there, I guess, to say, oh yeah, that's still a wall. Because this is all, keeping in mind, all this is 3D model in the interior. That's I find that pretty interesting, I guess, as far as how that's done. It kind of balance out as far as like what remains and what doesn't when you press the O key. Then if they're having that much of an issue during practice, what happens during the race? Well, you'll be able to turn it back on. That's what I'm saying. You'll be able to turn those options, those elements back on or off, right? So you, regardless of what session you're in, you'll be able to turn those elements on or off. I think having that option is always very beneficial, I guess, for that. And again, I'm not opposed at all as far as the way you've got it. I think that's... But I guess what I think of when I say that, once you start adding more of the 3D crowds and, other elements, I guess, to the infield, it's going to add more and more potential frames that'll be lost, right? And even distractions for that matter, I guess, as far as, because that's another thing I guess to take into consideration as far as distractions, that, not everyone is the same type of driver. Every driver is unique. So it's like if you have the option of being able to turn off elements to remove any distraction, or just even to gain, regardless if it's to remove distraction or to eliminate any potential frame rate loss, you want to have that option in there. Because that's already built in there. You have that from the builder's standpoint to be able to apply that. That's something I always like. If I have the room, I guess, to be able to apply it to something, I always want to make sure that I'm keeping that in close reach, I guess, as far as being able to do so. Frame rate problems in practice, then they will have the same problems during... Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, if they're having problems with being able to turn those elements off, right? So, like, if they're able to turn all these elements off, right? And they're having that problem even just in practice where there's not a lot of cars, as opposed to like race, yeah, that's a bigger issue. There's really not much you can do about that, right? But they would still need to have that option to be able to turn that off to see if that's really just a problem with their system just being too much of a potato, for lack of a better way to put it. if they have no way to turn off other elements to the track, you know, as far as populated items, I guess, as far as grandstands and things like that, that's going to give them grounds to say, well, then it's just the track, you know, because those options aren't able to be shut off. But if have that option, they can shut it off and they're seeing they're still having a problem, then that's just a problem with their system. So, and this is a constant struggle that you go with, that happens with track building. That issue, I guess, as far as drivers having an issue just with their system, and it's a constant struggle as far as to balance that out from a track builder standpoint. As far as like, you want to add all the detail to accommodate, I guess, all those that can handle it. What about those that can't? It's like, how much flexibility do you apply into that? That's the only reason why I mentioned that. I don't have a problem. My system can handle it, no issue, right? You know, you can chalk it up to be like, well, people just need to get with the times and have a system that can handle Inter 2003, right? You can say that all day long, but there's plenty of people still out there that don't have that. So, and it's a constant battle, even to this day, I feel. As long as I've been out of the Inter 2003 arena, I think it's still an issue, I guess, as far as you got people that are running potato machines that are going to have a complaint as far as to say, well, I can't race that track because I can't shut those off. I only like to run with just the track on, no shadows, yada yada. So, oh, you don't play that game as far as, you know, to accommodate? Yeah. I mean, that's just something I always take into consideration. And I'm just speaking from my experience, I guess, as far as from the perspective of building tracks for a league environment. You know, as far as in an online environment, as much as you hate to have to try and accommodate, you almost do. If you're gonna, especially if you're gonna make the track available publicly, it's quite another thing. If you're just building it for yourself and you're just racing it, I guess, as far as for within your own contained league, and you're not sharing it publicly, that's a whole different ballgame. But I'm speaking from the perspective, I guess, as far as if you're going to release it publicly. No, to get with the times of the game. Yeah, I mean, it still happens. I notice it. I see people complaining all the time. It's just like, you know, I'm a fly on the wall when it comes to some of these Inter 2003 forums, you know, as far as on, and you still get drivers complaining. It's about, well, I've only got this system. It's just like, well, you need to upgrade your system. It's just like, well, I ain't gonna do that. It's just like, you build the track or run tracks or whatever that are, you know, that can accommodate my system. It's just like, well, so it still happens to this day, I feel. So those types of people, and again, I'm just speaking from like the SRA builds that we did back in 2017. We had to take a lot of that into consideration, I guess, as far as the way how much detail was applied to the track, from, you know, having options to be able to turn things on and off and things like that. It gives, if anything, it gives the end users, I guess, as far as the ones that potentially want to complain, room to not have any room to complain. It's like, look, you're able to turn that off. If you just want to run it with just the track geometry itself and nothing else, you have that option. So then there's less of an argument. Well, yeah, and I guess that's why I say that if you want everybody to be able to potentially run on it, then that's what you would need to do. You have to take things, even though, like you initially mentioned, as far as you consider those elements that don't turn off population switch remain, because you're looking at them as a permanent structure that's always going to be there. That doesn't take away from those that would argue. It's just like, well, if I could turn off these objects, I wouldn't have all these frame rate issues, right? And at least it would give them an option to be able to say, okay, I got all this shut off here and I'm still having frame rate issues. It's just a problem with their PC. It's just a problem with their system. Because we know everything else from a geometric level is sound, right? I think that's the other thing to keep in mind as far as the way the track is built from the geometric level is sound. There's not a lot of small segments, you know, really sliver sections, you know, the way it's all nice and smooth, and, you know, as far as built from that geometric standpoint, everything's solid. So you can't argue with that. So granted, you probably still will get people that'll argue. It's just like, well, you had to put this here and blah blah blah. It's like, why do you need this? You know, people are going to complain for sure, but at least from a track builder standpoint, you know you've taken everything into consideration, I guess, as far as these potential arguments. I'm not trying to make an argument, but this is things that I have dealt with in the past, I guess, as far as track builds. It is a nightmare. It's definitely a nightmare, I guess I have to deal with that. But anyway, I'm liking the way it's turning out so far, so I'm not trying to discount the track whatsoever. I'm just thinking within the mindset, I guess, of those that would probably complain about what's going on with it, even at this stage. The other thing I'm keeping it somewhere down the line, it's going to get to the same level as you've done the Dover build and other builds of its kind, where you're going to need to start adding more elements to the infield, like the haulers, other structures and things like that. As you add these additional items there, it's going to become more evident. You know, 3D crowds, I guess that's another thing I think of there. It's going to become more evident that things are going to have to be able to be shut off. Especially using some of these more modern power mods like the 98 and the Manx 19. Okay. I feel like I've talked everybody's ear off, and I appreciate everybody that did let me, you know, put my words of advice there, I guess, as far as for these types of things. In no shape or form I'm trying to discourage, I guess, as far as anybody from, you know, wanting to either attempt to build a track or anything like that. I'm just putting some insight out there, I guess, as far as to understand the things that I've had to deal with in the past, why I take the approach that I do, I guess, as far as what the track builds that I got out there. That's the only reason why I mentioned it. So hopefully that'll is taken into consideration, I guess, as far as for that. It's pretty solid solid stream here. So just looking for a potential rate. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and end this thing. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end this thing. I think we got plenty of people, I guess, as far as that are just getting with the new season here. That is fall, and I think that's probably part of the reason, I guess, why we don't have as many people hanging around here, and that's totally really cool. I do appreciate those that did drop by here for Spline Design Studios Saturday, and Torch, as far as for that 24-month resub. Solid stream. Alrighty then. So I'm just closing to some things down here. Actually, I still got it on this screen. My bad. My bad. Hold on a second. Here, I thought I had it on this screen. This is why I do need. I definitely do need a stream deck or something like that. I was going over everything while I was flapping my gums there. I was trying to pointing out, I guess, as far as what's going on in Sandbox here, but yeah, I think the direction this track is going here it's pretty solid, and you know, everything that I've shown as far as the approach that I take, the infield, I'm really curious to see Torch, I guess, as far as what approach you take to that, as well as any further modifications to the texture to those SMI medallions to the outside wall. Yeah, just really looking forward to that. So far, everything that you've done is turned out pretty primo. So, okay. With all that being said, I appreciate, again, everybody that did stick around, I guess, as far as even in a lurking capacity, I guess, as far as for Spline Design Studios Saturday. Y'all been great. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. I know this past Tuesday, for Truckin' Tuesday, I just was not able, I guess, to get with it, I guess, as far as for Tuesday there. So, if nothing else, by Tuesday, for Truckin' Tuesdays, as far as playing through, I guess, on the American Truck Simulator, I'll be doing that. That should be hopefully at its regular time there, and if not, then I guess Wednesdays for sure, I guess, for Breakfast. There might potentially be, I mentioned this as far as last stream, this past Wednesday, that there might be a new season coming up for the tournament aspect there at Breakfast there. So if there is, definitely be, regardless of that, I will be doing some Breakfast on Wednesday as far as playing that tournament aspect. And if nothing else, if they haven't introduced, I guess, a new season, I will be at least, getting in on what the daily challenges are there and stuff like that. So if any of that does interest you, I invite you, I guess, to stop on in for Breakfast Wednesdays, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The schedule is 100% available, I guess, on the channel for you to check out. Also have the social medias that is on the channel. I guess as far as we got our Rock Nation Discord, we got the Tweeter. Look at this. This is why. That's another reason why I need. I definitely need a stream deck, I guess, for all this stuff. To be able to have to type all this stuff in there. So the bots put out the information there, I guess, as far as the Rock Nation Discord. We got the, I'm on the Twitter, and also we got our Spline Design Studios Facebook group page that serves as our forum for the website, SplineDesignStudios.com. Feel free to check those out at your leisure. I do try to post on the Discord and the Twitter on the regular, I guess, as far as to let everybody know what's going on, post-fact and pre-fact, I guess, as far as the streams. On Tuesday, primarily Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. Friday is usually still up in the air, I guess, for Farm Friday. Haven't been able to stream, I guess, this past Friday here either. Those usually are pretty tentative. If and when I do, it's going to be a sporadic time. So yeah, those avenues there, I guess, as far as with the Rock Nation Discord and the Twitter, will definitely let you know, I guess, as far as when I do go live. Also, if you haven't already, hit the follow button on the channel for the streams to get the notification when the streams go live. Again, you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. We will see you again real soon. Bye for now. Oops.